Chapter 73. Since Murphy was coming, Young E was not in the mood to open the restaurant. Anyway, there were only a few customers a day. Therefore, he took off the sign early, closed the door, and went upstairs. Young E knew that Murphy had been so busy these 2 months that she did not eat regularly, so her appetite was not very good. Therefore, he did not intend to prepare a few dishes casually. When Murphy and she arrived home, Young E was wearing an apron and carrying a spatula in the kitchen. "Where's Xiaowan?" Young E asked in surprise. Murphy curled her lips and said unhappily, "Just us? Do you think that everyone is willing to appreciate your cooking? Xiaowan has an appointment. I don't know which handsome guy stole her heart." This woman, when facing Young E, seemed to gradually put down the defenses in her heart. Her every frown and smile was full of charm, and she was no longer like before when she had an ice-cold expression on her face every day. "Papa, it smells so good." She could not wait to take off her small leather boots and walk in front of him in slippers. She went to the second floor and sniffed like a puppy. Her eyes were shining as she said, "Is it time for dinner?" Young E took Murphy's bag and walked at the back. He smiled and said, "Not yet. We have to wait. The delicious food needs to wait for a while more." However, a few minutes after Young E went into the kitchen, he came out again, holding a plate of strawberries with frost. Murphy and she were very hungry when they saw the bright red strawberries. However, the middle of the strawberries was hollowed out. They did not know what white thing was inside, so they were very curious. "What is this?" Murphy could not help but ask. "This is called condensed milk strawberry ice." Young E smiled and said, "I specially choose this kind of big strawberry, cut off the stalk, hollowed out the middle, and then poured condensed milk into it. Finally, I put it in the refrigerator to freeze it. It's completely natural and handmade. You can try it first." After Young E put down the plate, he went back to the kitchen. However, behind him, the 2 guys, one big and one small, already couldn't wait to eat. "Aya, it's so cold." His voice was muffled. "Yummy, yummy." Cece gasped for air, but she still cried out happily, "It's sweet and sour." Fei's voice was as happy as a child who had not grown up yet. Young E, who was cooking in the kitchen, could not help but smile when he heard something. Finally, it was time to eat. Just when Fei and Cece were looking at the dishes on the table longingly, Young E served them the porridge that he had carefully cooked. "What is this?" Murphy reacted, looking at the soft porridge, and the colorful yellow, black, light red and other ingredients, and asked with some confusion, "This is mixed grain porridge." Young E introduced, "It's pumpkin, black beans, glutinous rice, millet and peanuts. Then it's boiled until it's soft and melts in the mouth. It's very good for the stomach." She couldn't wait to secretly take a small spoon and eat a small bite, just in time to eat her favorite peanuts. The little girl blinked her big eyes and said happily, "Delicious." "Ishi, you can't be so rude. Wait for your father to sit down, then we can start eating." Murphy, who attached great importance to etiquette, immediately scolded with a stern face. She could only obediently put her 2 small hands on her knees and sit properly. But there was a smile in her eyes, and she even stuck out her little tongue at her father, as if secretly complaining to her father about her mother's strictness. Young E smiled carelessly and continued to explain, but he was concise and comprehensive, because she couldn't help but want to eat quickly. The theme of today's meal is to eat well. To eat well, one must first have an appetite. In that case, I have no choice but to recommend this plate of sweet and sour squid. It's a replica of sweet and sour pork, but the base ingredient is squid, which is more elastic and chewy. This is vegetarian tofu. Although it looks no different from ordinary tofu, it's stuffed with carrots and chopped shiitake mushrooms. This is she's favorite soda chicken wings, similar to cola chicken wings, but called cola chicken wings for the sake of differentiation. It's just lightly fried in oil, so it won't be very hot. This is. Finally, Young E finished, and the queen nodded in satisfaction. She waved her chopsticks and ordered confidently, "Let's eat." She was already swallowing her saliva. Hearing this, she happily grabbed the small spoon and ate the porridge with relish. Delicious. It's sweet, she likes it so much. She said vaguely, probably because she ate the pumpkin. It's better than Auntie's. Murphy said somewhat sternly. Don't talk when eating, Yang-shi. How many times do you want Mom to say it? Yang-yi picked up a piece of cola chicken wing for his daughter and put it on the small plate in front of her. He advised. It's okay, it's just eating, what's the problem with talking? Of course it's the problem, she is a girl. How can she be like those men, spitting saliva and talking while eating? Murphy was unhappy when she heard this. She put down her chopsticks and argued seriously. Well, if they quarreled, they wouldn't be able to eat. Yang-yi quickly shut his mouth and only picked up food for them. She was small and couldn't stand up to pick up food on her own. So Yang-yi did what Murphy was supposed to do. At the same time, he also picked up soft and smooth tofu and sweet and sour squid for Murphy. Murphy was actually not used to others picking up food for her. She had been raised to be very independent since she was young, and she even resisted other people's attentions. But this time it was a little different. Yang-yi was picking up food for her. For some reason, a very strange feeling lingered in her heart. Was it warmth? Was it happiness? Or what was it? Murphy couldn't explain it clearly. So she hesitated for a moment and didn't refuse. Actually, it's because the food he cooks is too delicious. Murphy found an excuse for herself in her heart. Otherwise, I wouldn't give him face. Yang-yi's food was, of course, delicious. Murphy and she were so full that they didn't want to move from their chairs. In the end, Yang-yi cleared the table and suggested, "Let's go to the dam for a walk." "No, I'm not going." Murphy shook her head. "What's the problem? It's night now, there's basically no one on the dam, and the wind is comfortable." Yang-yi persuaded. "Let's go out for a walk and take it as a distraction. I'll drive you back in a while." She was interested. She stretched her arms high to attract her father's attention and then shouted, "I want to go too, I want to go too." "Okay then." Murphy hesitated for a moment and then agreed. The night wind blew from the Grand Canal, and 3 figures, 2 big and 1 small, appeared on the dark river dam. Yang-yi walked at the back, carefully protecting the 2 in front. Cece walked in the first, but her little hand was held by Mo Fei. The dam was actually very spacious, and there was a tall protective fence, but Murphy was still worried. Actually, this was the first time Yang-yi and Murphy went out for a walk together. If it weren't for she, the cheerful person who kept laughing, the atmosphere might have been a little awkward. But even so, Murphy and Yang-yi still didn't know how to talk to each other. They were silent and kept silent. It was Yang-yi who broke the silence. He said, "I quite like your song, Strangers." In the darkness, the water of the Grand Canal gently lapped against the dam. The sound of the water rushing against the dam was very soothing. Murphy turned her head and saw Yang-yi's bright eyes in the darkness. As if they had a telepathic connection, Mo Fei said softly, "How about I sing it for you now?" "But there's no accompaniment," Yang-yi said with some regret. "The inky cold night rain. Can't wet my heart, just like this old road. Can't wait for the person to come, forever unable to rush that deep mark of love." Murphy's ethereal voice, with its own melody, was already softly singing. Yang-yi closed his mouth and listened quietly. She, who liked her mother's singing the most, was no longer naughty. She obediently followed her mother's steps, as if she was also following her mother's rhythm. "You said that this road is a little dark, but you're not willing to accompany me. The so-called care is only left with indifference. I can only bear the sadness alone." Murphy's singing was sad and tired, like an intoxicating red wine. Yang-yi was a little intoxicated listening to it. Yang-yi looked at Murphy's beautiful figure in the darkness. This quiet and beautiful woman was like an orchid in an empty valley, and actually made people feel pity for her. He couldn't help but have some fanciful thoughts. Strangers. Then what road were the 2 of them walking on now? Chapter 74. After sending off Murphy, Yang Yi welcomed a new customer the next day. The deputy manager of the copyright department and the managers of several publishing houses accompanied by him came to Yang Yi's coffee shop. This time Yang Yi didn't treat them to the best coffee. He put away his treasured Blue Mountain and mandolin. Instead he made a simple mocha with milk and sugar cubes, which was praised by everyone. Obviously there was a lot of flattery involved. Yang Yi smiled but did not say anything. He secretly rejoiced in his heart. When it came to negotiations, Yang Yi was not an expert. His best helper was Guozi. Although the little fatty had already finished his college entrance examination, he gave Yang Yi a call with a smile and went on a graduation trip with his classmates. Naturally, he could not be counted on. However, although Yang Yi did not know how to negotiate, he had brought a magical skill from his previous life, acting. Moreover, he acted like he had a card up his sleeve. When the negotiations started, he acted like he had a card up his sleeve. He asked the publishing houses to use the method of bidding and show him the conditions they had drafted. I hope that everyone can be honest. I will choose the final publishing house according to your conditions. After that we will discuss in detail. This is to avoid wasting everyone's time. Yang Yi said with a smile. The managers of the publishing houses looked at each other. This was the first time they had met an author like this. Manager Huang, isn't this a little problematic? One of the managers could not help but ask the person in charge of the copyright department. I don't think so. Another manager agreed. Deputy Manager Huang of the copyright department smiled bitterly and shook his head. He said, I think it's okay. Cough cough, it's like this. Because we have discussed with Mr. Yang Yi before. He will have the final say in the transaction of the physical publishing rights. Therefore we will discuss according to Mr. Yang Yi's request. You can think about it. If you don't want to participate in this bid, it doesn't matter. Even if we don't have a deal, our friendship is still there. Yang Yi also looked unyielding. He did not know what conditions the other party would give him, but Yang Yi was convinced that his books, whether it was Soldier Assault or Drawing Sword, would definitely sell well as long as they were out in physical form. This was tested by the market in his previous life. In an era where piracy was rampant, Drawing Sword, which was published in the new era, sold more than 400,000 copies in 6 or 7 years. It was obvious how valuable it was. In this world where copyright awareness was strong, Yang Yi could already foresee the prospects of his 2 so-called web novels, and physical book sales leaps and bounds. Therefore, he was confident that he was not afraid of negotiations. Sure enough, after the managers of several publishing houses looked at each other, the manager who shouted the loudest was the first to pick up a pen and paper. The others also swarmed over and almost fought over it. The selection process of the hidden bid was needless to say. In the end, Yang Yi picked up an envelope and said loudly like a broker at the stock exchange, Mr. Liu from Sahara Publishing, congratulations. We can discuss further in detail now. A thin man with messy hair stood up in surprise. He raised his hand and said, I'm Mr. Liu. However, Yang Yi's choice caused an uproar in the room. Even Deputy Manager Huang was surprised. Are you kidding me? The manager who shouted the loudest just now jumped out again. He shouted angrily, What kind of conditions did Sahara Publishing offer you? I don't believe that a small publishing house like them can offer better conditions than our big publishing houses. Well, I'm sorry. It's not convenient for me to disclose it to you. Yang Yi smiled and refused. Deputy Manager Huang couldn't help but stand up. He said, Mr. Yang Yi, although it's not suitable for me to interrupt at this time, shouldn't you consider it again? In terms of scale, Sahara Publishing is indeed smaller than the other 3. Even if the conditions given to you are better now, in the long run, it's difficult for them to give you the benefits from sales to be comparable to the other 3. That's right. You're too short-sighted. The other 3 managers echoed one after another. The thin Mr. Liu actually didn't have much hope when he saw the other 3 competitors, but now that he was chosen, He was as happy as if he had won a prize. But now that Deputy Manager Huang and the others said so, he became nervous again. He was afraid that the duck that was in his mouth would fly away again. He quickly said, "Although our publishing house is not big, we are very sincere. Mr. Young, we can still discuss the conditions that you just wrote." Young Yi raised his hand to quiet them down. He said faintly, "Actually, the reason why I chose Sahara Publishing was not only because the conditions they offered were very sincere, but also because they have an advantage that the other three don't have." This time everyone was stunned. Didn't Sahara Publishing say that it was smaller than the other three? What? The one who shouted the loudest couldn't help but ask. "Sahara Publishing has an additional channel to sell physical books online compared to you all," Yang Yi said faintly. In fact, Yang Yi wasn't calm. The online shopping model in this world had only shown a small sign, and it wasn't as big as Taobao in his previous life. Yang Yi was surprised by Sahara Publishing's foresight. Their boss set up an online website to sell physical books. Readers could pay for books through registered mail or bank transfer, and then send the books to the readers through the library. This model was very similar to the earliest Zhua, 99, and Dang Dang in Yang Yi's previous life. It could be said that this was the prototype of an online bookstore. What's the difference between this and online novels? With this kind of online sales, they won't be able to sell more than a few books a month, and the readers still have to pay for the books by mail. It's not even as good as us. Our company has connections with Far East and Zhonghua bookstores. There were always people who were still stuck in the old mindset, and they mocked Yang Yi's choice. However, Yang Yi's choice didn't change, and he calmly apologized to the other party. In the end, only Yang Yi and Mr. Liu were left in the coffee shop. Everyone else left in anger, and even Deputy Manager Huang smiled bitterly. He clasped his hands at Yang Yi, and then chased after them. Deputy Manager Huang felt that the profits from physical sales of Yang Yi's books weren't a big deal, but he still had to establish good relations with these publishers. After all, online literature was still the weak side, and publishing houses had a lot of resources, and there were still many things that needed to be done with them. Then Mr. Liu, whose hair was messy, said nervously. He didn't dare to touch the new coffee that Yang Yi had served him. "Then let's talk about the conditions for me to invest in your publishing house." Yang Yi waved his hand and smiled. This aura immediately scared Mr. Liu silly. It was unknown how Mr. Liu would feel if he knew that Yang Yi's savings were less than a few $100,000, but he still wanted to invest in someone else's publishing house. Chapter 75. Yang Yi wanted to be involved in the Sahara Publishing House, or strictly speaking, the Sahara Online Bookstore. Of course, it was not a decision that a small manager like Mr. Liu could make. Mr. Liu asked the boss in fear and trepidation. Then the negotiation was postponed, and the boss personally came out. After sending away the guest, Yang Yi breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, Shi, who was hiding on the sofa and peeping at them, ran over and acted like a spoiled child, asking her father to hug her. Yang Yi doted on the little girl a little. After all, she was the closest person to him in terms of blood and affection. He picked up Shi and let her sit on his strong arms. "Papa, do you have a lot of money?" Shi's voice was soft, and her small hands were also soft. She grabbed the flesh on her father's cheek and played with it while asking. Yang Yi's whole body was full of muscles, but when his daughter grabbed him like this, even steel would turn into molten iron. Even a tough man could not escape from her soft hands. "Well, I have some money. What's wrong? Is our Shi going to be Dad's little housekeeper?" Yang Yi laughed happily, so gentle that it was not like him. No. The little girl twisted her butt and waved her hand to explain. She wants Papa to give some money to Mom. Mom is so pitiful. This time Yang Yi was confused. Give money to Murphy. Regardless of whether Murphy wanted his money or not, Yang Yi gave money to Murphy. Wasn't that stupid? This woman was too rich. Not to mention the mansion, Who knew how much money she had saved over the years? Yang Yi thought about his six-figure savings and secretly laughed. The other party's money was probably dozens or even hundreds of times more than his. Why do you say your mother is pitiful? Yang Yi asked puzzledly. On TV, Mom is so pitiful. She's being bullied. She pouted and said, Auntie also said that Mom worked very hard, but the bad guy on TV said that Mom didn't. She was still very naive. She took her father's hand and looked at him pitifully with her big eyes. She begged, Papa, can you give some money to Mom so that Mom won't be so sad? She can also spend more time with Shi. Yang Yi finally understood the ins and outs of the problem. He smiled somewhat helplessly and reached out his hand to rub the little fellow's head. Today he didn't braid her hair. It was so soft and smooth that it felt especially good. Your mother, how should I put it? She didn't work for money. Yang Yi thought for a moment and said, Your mother likes singing, so she wants to try again and return to the stage she is familiar with. She looked at her father in confusion and tried hard to understand what her father said. Yang Yi also tried to explain in simple words. So in the process, she may be criticized or questioned by others, but this is the process that your mother has to bear. Just like she wants to eat delicious tiramisu, she has to wait a long time for Dad to make it. Then she doesn't want to eat tiramisu, she can eat a small cake. The little girl didn't understand at all and said anxiously, She doesn't want Mom to be scolded. As she spoke, the mist floated up. The little girl's skin was white and translucent, and it was easy to see the change. So immediately, her eyes turned red and she was about to cry. Yang Yi quickly comforted her. Okay, she, don't worry, Dad will find a way. I won't let your mother be depressed forever. Really? She suddenly became happy with tears in her eyes and asked happily, Is Papa going to help Mom? In fact, she was subconsciously thinking about the problem of money. Back then, Yang Yi took her to the bank to withdraw money. Seeing is believing. She felt that since her father had so much money, he would definitely be able to help her mother. Course, if I don't help your mother, who else can? Yang Yi smiled faintly. Although he was very calm, his eyes were shining with confidence. Of course, Yang Yi wasn't thinking about money. In fact, he had already started to choose suitable songs for Murphy. With such a large music library in his previous life, Yang Yi didn't worry about whether he could write songs for Murphy. He also contributed to the sales of more than 10 copies of Murphy's new album. He bought all of Murphy's new albums on a shelf in an audio and video store. However, when he came back and listened to it, he could still understand why the media had been pessimistic about Murphy's comeback. In the new album, except for a few old songs that were very good, the 8 new songs, including the title song, were all songs of poor quality. Perhaps Yang Yi's judgment standards were indeed very strict, but Yang Yi felt that if Murphy wasn't Shi's mother, he would never buy such an album. However, Murphy's voice and singing were still impeccable. Yang Yi even felt that Murphy was better than before she retired. Perhaps it was because she had more experience, or perhaps it was because she still persevered in practicing over the years, or perhaps it was because of the precipitation and accumulation in many aspects. Yang Yi believed that as long as there were good songs, Murphy would definitely be able to amaze the world. Of course, there was still a problem now. Murphy's previous attitude made Yang Yi have a wrong understanding. Murphy definitely didn't want him to intervene in her career. If he proposed to write songs for her, with her stubborn character, she would definitely not be willing. From God's perspective, Yang Yi's idea was obviously a misunderstanding. But who asked Murphy to hold a relatively old understanding of Yang Yi? Once Yang Yi mentioned Murphy's work, Murphy was a little sensitive. Of course, Yang Yi also had a concern. That was, if he wrote songs for Murphy, would Murphy be suspicious again? Yang Yi had shown 3 skills that Yang Yi didn't have before: making coffee, writing and cooking. These were things that Mo Fei could barely accept. But in terms of music, Murphy herself was an expert. How could she not know that music wasn't learned in a few years? Yang Yi not only resisted the entertainment industry in the past, but also showed that he didn't know anything about music. At this time, if he suddenly took out a few well-produced songs, how could Murphy not be suspicious? Therefore, Yang Yi had always been hiding. At most, when he was alone or after she went to sleep, he would play the guitar, play the songs he liked in his previous life, or learn some of the excellent music works in this world. In front of Murphy. He didn't dare to show it. In the future, maybe he could gradually let Murphy see his musical talent, but this might need a process before she could accept it naturally. But now, Yang Yi still decided to use the side account Mu Xiang to write songs for Murphy. Because of this, Yang Yi had also closed the private information of the stage name Mu Xiang on the copyright organization. Other than Chen Yijie and the others from Tianxiang who knew who Mu Xiang was, the others or Murphy would have a hard time finding out who wrote songs for her. This was fun. Chapter 76. Just as Yang Yi was preparing to write a song for Murphy, who had always been clean and didn't have any scandals, suddenly broke out in a scandal. Older sister, younger brother. Murphy exposed to love with Zhu Jia. The news was spread through an entertainment media with its own portal. This kind of news was actually not surprising. There were often all kinds of gossip or rumors. Only those small newspapers that specialized in spreading scandals would compete to report those rumors that had no concrete evidence. But this time was different. The website exposed photos and there were more than one or two. Although they were secretly taken, it could clearly be seen that Zhu Jia and Murphy were talking intimately. What's more, in the last photo, it could be seen that Zhu Jia was hugging Murphy. What if this wasn't concrete evidence? Then what was? Immediately, all the major media and tabloids reprinted it. The media was still okay, but the tabloids had no integrity at all. Shocking. Jade female songstress actually did such a thing with underage man. This was the title of a tabloid in Guangdong province. It was quite similar to the style of the UC shocking department in Yang Yi's previous life. It was said that after it was printed, the sales increased greatly. Frustrated in the music world, successful in love, Murphy fell into the trap of love? Disappointing, Murphy's golden flower has also been plucked. Murphy, who had been silent for a long time because of the album, once again appeared on the headlines of major media. This news was really too hot. Whether or not they were Murphy's fans, people who had once understood Murphy's brilliance were all talking about it. The sudden surge in popularity also added fuel to the sales of Murphy's new album. But Murphy wasn't happy to see this scene. After she learned the news from Mo Xiaowen, she angrily rushed back to Zhongqing and directly rushed to Sister Ling's office. "Why did you do this?" Murphy gritted her teeth and asked angrily. "What do you mean?" Sister Ling pretended to be innocent. But Murphy didn't buy it. She tightly gripped the back of the chair and said, "Sister Ling, we've worked together for 7 or 8 years. Do you think I don't know what you're best at? But we've always agreed that I won't touch these things. Why are you still using me?" "Use you?" At this moment, Niu Meiling did not pretend anymore. Ignoring Murphy's frown, she lit a thin and long cigarette, took a puff and then leisurely said, "Murphy, how old are you? How can you still not distinguish between good and bad? Should I use you or help you?" Without waiting for Murphy to respond, she threw out a document and said to Murphy, "Look at the sales of your album. It's all thanks to the hype over the past 2 days. Otherwise, where would you get more than 200,000 yuan? In the last week, except for a few relatively BT albums, normal album sales will enter a period of weakness." Murphy's album is the same. Before the sales increase, there are only 5 or 6,000 copies left. To suddenly increase to more than 100,000 a day, this is obviously more surprising. "But I don't need it," Murphy said coldly. "I don't need such results. Even if I lose, I want to lose fair and square." Murphy's personality is very straightforward, or it can be said that she is a clear stream in the entertainment industry. She wants real results and can't tolerate a little sand in her eyes. "Murphy, you have to understand," Niu Meiling shouted and said, Now you are no longer the top star from before. You can't even enter the A-list. The company still gives you so many resources, but your results can't be compared to others. Song Yoon Hanfei. Their last album's results are better than yours, right? Why are you still so arrogant? You don't listen to the company's arrangements. Murphy was stunned. She looked at the other party in a daze and suddenly felt that this Sister Ling, who used to like and understand her, was a little strange. Nyo Myling also realized that her tone was a little harsh and accidentally shouted out the fire in her heart. After all, she is one of the biggest managers in the entertainment industry, so she quickly controlled her temper. Isn't the company's arrangement for your own good? Nyo Myling's voice became gentler, as if Sister Ling had returned. Murphy, you have to understand that Sister Ling also wants to fight for better results for you so that you won't be laughed at. But why didn't you discuss it with me first? Murphy was still brooding. If I discussed it with you, would you have agreed? Nyo Myling waved her hand and smiled. So, Sister Ling can only kill first and report later. It seems that the effect is not bad. However, Murphy really didn't like this feeling. She bit her lower lip and said, I'm going to clarify it with the reporters. She added, she can see it. I don't want her to think that Mom is such a person who will do anything for results. You can clarify it, but not now. Nyo Myling's attitude was firm and soft. Murphy, you have to understand Sister Ling's difficulties. Wait a few more days and clarify it after this week, okay? Sister Ling is begging you. With that said, how could Murphy continue to fight with the other party? After all, she was indebted to Sister Ling. Coming out of Sister Ling's office, Murphy met the other main character of the scandal, Zhu Jie. These days, Zhu Jie could be said to be in high spirits. He also benefited from this scandal and received a lot of attention. It was as if he was going to go from a third-tier celebrity to a second-tier celebrity. He was so proud that even his cologne was thicker. However, Murphy didn't give him any face this time. She kept a cold face and completely ignored Zhu Jie's greeting. She walked away with a hostile aura. After Mo Fei left, Zhu Jie turned his head in disdain, turned around and pushed the door open. Auntie Ling, I think I'm in a good state right now. Why don't we strike while the iron is hot and arrange an album for me? Coming out of the company, even though it was a hot summer day, Murphy still felt cold as she got into Mo Xiaojuan's car. Sister, where are we going? Mo Xiaojuan asked with trepidation. To Yang. Murphy suddenly stopped. She hesitated for a moment and changed her words. Let's go home. I'm tired. When Murphy got home, she curled up on the sofa tiredly. The nanny, Auntie Zhu, saw this and quickly hid in her nanny's room. Murphy hesitated for a moment before taking out her phone and dialing Yang Yi's number. The phone rang for a long time before Yang Yi picked it up. Hello. Yang Yi's voice was very calm. Murphy was silent for a moment before saying, Don't believe the scandal in the newspaper. B. Murphy suddenly felt wronged. That was arranged by the company to create hype. I didn't know about it. I know. Yang Yi still replied calmly. But the more he was like this, the more flustered Murphy felt. She angrily said, You're jealous. Not. Yang Yi replied after a while. Well, this time it was a lie. Yang Yi was indeed jealous, although he didn't understand what that feeling was. Anyway, after seeing the news, his heart was flustered. But what Yang Yi said before was true. He knew that this was a publicity stunt. He could see it from the photos. Yang Yi's sharp eyes could immediately distinguish whether it was a real hug or a mistake. However, even so, looking at the headlines of the news, Yang Yi felt very unhappy. Then he really wanted to cut that brat into two pieces. In his previous life, those who angered him, no one could leave a whole corpse. But Murphy's phone call and explanation made his mood better. Of course, with his character it was hard for him to show it. You are. Murphy sensitively thought that Yang Yi had become cold and indifferent. She felt so wronged that she wanted to die. She even sounded like she was about to cry. It was obviously not her fault. "'Kay, I'm really not jealous. Don't worry." Yang Yi had a headache and could only coax her like how he coaxed Shishi. "I've already told you the truth. You're not allowed to be jealous." Murphy pursed her lips and said very seriously, "'Kay, I'm not jealous. You are. This silly Scorpio." Chapter 77. Mo Fei's scandal got bigger and bigger under the influence of some people with ulterior motives. But for Yang Yi, he still believed in his own eyes. Whether there was something going on between Mo Fei and that Jew Jia, it could be seen from those secretly taken photos. What's more, Murphy also explained it to him, so Yang Yi didn't take it to heart. On the contrary, Murphy was worried and uncomfortable, while Yang Yi, who had a big heart, happily took his daughter to the temple fair according to the original plan. In addition to many well-preserved ancient villages in Tingshan district, there were also some interesting traditional customs, such as the temple fair in the middle of every month. Yang Yi heard from the neighbors that this temple fair was very popular and large-scale. Whether it was the old people who liked traditional customs, the young people who liked bustling places, or the greedy children, they could all find their fun. Yang Yi had been looking forward to it for a long time, so he specially asked when the temple fair would be held this month. Finally the day came. In the evening, without having dinner, Yang Yi set off with Shishi. "Papa, I want to eat a lot of delicious food." Shishi sat in the car and couldn't hold back her excitement. Like a lark, she chattered with her sweet voice. "How much delicious food is there? You and Papa have never been there. How do you know there will be a lot of delicious food?" Yang Yi teased her. "What if there is no delicious food?" She covered her mouth with her two small hands, and her big eyes were full of surprise. The naive little fellow believed it, and hurriedly asked nervously, "What should we do? Is Shishi going to be hungry?" Originally Shishi was very cute, but now she was serious. It was even more fun. "Ha ha." Yang Yi couldn't help laughing because of his daughter. For safety, he gently stepped on the clutch to slow down the car. "Oh, Shishi wants to eat something delicious." The little girl was unwilling to comply and cried out. Yang Yi smiled and said, "All right, there will be a lot of delicious food. Daddy promises. I won't let Shishi starve." The temple fair was not held in the university town, but on the street of City God Temple at the foot of the North Pavilion Mountain. Before they arrived, Yang Yi could already feel the excitement. His car couldn't enter, so he had to find a parking lot far away. In the afterglow of the setting sun, Yang Yi held Shishi's little hand and walked over. Because there was a slight slope, they could see a spacious but somewhat crowded long street from afar. There were many shops on both sides of the street, but more of them were street vendors who took advantage of the spacious street to set up their stalls. There were also many wandering hawkers pushing carts and hawking their wares. It was only when they got closer that they could feel the liveliness of the place. Signboards hung high above their heads, banners fluttered in the wind, and people surged around them, jostling shoulder to shoulder. The sounds of hawking, shouting, chatting, and laughter rang in their ears. It was even noisier than a wet market. There are so many people. Shishi was a little nervous. Obviously, it was the first time for her to encounter such a complicated environment. She was so small, but all she could see were all kinds of legs. She couldn't help but raise her head and see strange and scary adults. She always felt that she was going to be pushed around by the rolling crowd, so she held her father's hand tightly in fear. Suddenly, she felt that her armpit was lifted, and then her whole body flew up as if she was riding on the clouds. She rotated and sat on her father's neck. "Oh!" She hurriedly held her father's head tightly, for fear that she would fall. It was not the first time that she had experienced this action, but every time she sat on his neck, she would be very nervous, and the feeling of slight dizziness was very scary. "You're covering Daddy's eyes." Yang Yi smiled helplessly. He reached out to pull Shishi's clothes. Today, Shishi was wearing denim shorts, a short-sleeved t-shirt, and a small vest, which looked fresh and delicate. Of course, sitting on her father's neck, it was not easy for her to be exposed. After adapting to the feeling of being in the air, Cece became lively. Not only could she see far from where she was sitting, but her field of vision had also widened. More importantly, she was hugging her father's head, so she didn't have to worry about being squeezed. The little girl's sense of security slowly increased. "It smells so good." Shishi looked around happily and kept calling her father. "Papa, look, there are so many delicious things. Papa, look, what is this?" Yang Yi was still very patient. Although sometimes he was interrupted by his daughter when he saw the calligraphy and painting stall that he was interested in, Yang Yi still patiently followed his daughter's instructions. "This is a sugar figurine. The boss's skill is good." Yang Yi was also interested. He did not expect that this old business still existed in this world. Perhaps even if there were differences in history, some livelihood developed from material needs would still appear. "Hey, this little brother has good eyesight." The old man, whose business was very good and busy, looked up at Yang Yi and Shishi, and said with a smile, "My skill of drawing sugar figurines was learned in Sichuan province. Birds, beasts, trees, flowers, fruits, as long as you name it, there is nothing that I can't draw. Look, Shishi also wants it." The little girl said enviously when she saw the grandfather stick a painted sugar figurine on the bamboo chopsticks, gently scoop it up, and hand it to a young man next to him. "Then I'll have to trouble you to draw a dragon for my daughter." Yang Yi smiled and said, "She is a dragon. You have to draw those cute little dragons," Sissy added. The little girl was talking about the cartoon dragon that her father used to draw for her, a cartoon version. She preferred that kind of little dragon. It was very cute and looked better than the big dragon that was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Yang Yi smiled. He put Shishi down and said to the old man, "The dragon she wants is not as fierce as the ones in our usual New Year's pictures. It is shorter, has a bigger head, and looks more cute." It was a pity that there were no strokes. Otherwise, Yang Yi could draw it for the other party as a reference. "It doesn't matter. Grandpa will draw one for you. What do you think? What do you think?" the old man said to Shishi with a smile. Shishi nodded shyly. The old man first boiled the sugar. As he boiled, he introduced, "The real skill of drawing a sugar figurine is not only in the drawing, but also in boiling the sugar. If the sugar is too thick and thin, don't even think about drawing a good sugar figurine." After all, the old man had been a craftsman for most of his life. He was very confident in his skills. After boiling the sugar, he calmed down and scooped up the syrup with a spoon. Using the spoon as a pen, he drew on the copper plate. He was not inferior to a calligrapher who wrote big characters. The old man moved his wrist and the spoon. Sometimes he lifted it, sometimes he shook it, sometimes he paused, and sometimes he deepened it. The embryonic form of a small dragon had already appeared. Shishi also stood on tiptoe and looked curiously. However, she did not dare to breathe loudly. She was so sincere that it was as if she was looking at a very delicate work of art. She was afraid that it would break if she breathed. Finally, the old man finished drawing. It was indeed a traditional dragon, but the head was a little bigger and the feet were a little shorter. It looked very funny. However, it had to be said that the old man's skills were very good. The lines on the dragon's body were clear, and the beard and hair at the corners of the dragon's mouth were also drawn. When gently scooped up, the thin beard and hair were still firmly stuck to the dragon's body. The old man stuck the sugar figurine with a bamboo stick and shook it in front of Shishi. He asked with a smile, "Little girl, do you think Grandpa's drawing is good?" "It's good." Shishi was stunned. She hugged her father's leg and said obediently, "Then do you want it?" the old man asked with a smile. Shishi looked at her father embarrassedly, but the desire in her eyes was revealed. Yang Yi smiled and took out the money. How could he not want it? He even gave her an extra 100 yuan as his respect and support for his rival's skills. However, Shishi held this little sugar dragon in her hand and was unwilling to eat it the entire night. Chapter 78. Like a cloud that just came out of the mountains. I only thought that he was frivolous, but it turned out that his bones were not vulgar. Demure like a flower shining on the water, moving like a willow in the wind. Delicate eyebrows and corners of eyes, gentle voice and smile. Clearly an outsider in front of me, but in the bottom of my heart, I feel like an old friend. Although there was a lot of food at the temple fair, there were also many things to play and watch. Along the way, Yang Yi took his daughter to enjoy the performances of many Jianghu artists, such as juggling, playing with monkeys, and small fights. A traveling circus performed Shaoxing opera in the open air, which attracted many old people to watch. P.S. When it comes to Shaoxing opera, you may not have any idea what it is. At the beginning of the chapter, the famous section of Shaoxing opera, Sister Lin Fell from the Sky, was selected from the Shaoxing opera, Dream of the Red Chamber. Many people should have heard of it. Of course, in this world, Dream of the Red Chamber does not exist, so Xiaohan deleted the opening Sister Lin Fell from the Sky. Yang Yi, who was listening to Shaoxing opera for the first time, also watched with great interest for a while until she was a little impatient, and then he walked away. After all, it was difficult for a child to come into contact with traditional opera without special talent or the influence of her grandparents. However, there were still many things to play at the temple fair. Instead of staying in the same place for too long, it was better to walk around and see more new things. Along the way they ate a lot of food such as beef offal, fried dough twist, bowl cake and so on. It seemed that there were all kinds of delicious food from all over the world. Shi's little belly was already bulging, but she still wanted more. "Papa, I want this." She seemed to see something. She excitedly shook her little butt, raised her hand and shouted. Yang Yi was afraid that she would fall, so he quickly raised his hand and supported her little butt from behind. Then he smiled and said, "You still want to eat? Think about how much you ate tonight. You'll be full later and your stomach will hurt." She moved her little feet and said, "It's not food. Papa, look, that big bear baby is very cute. I want a big bear baby." At this moment, Yang Yi looked in the direction Cici was pointing at. It turned out that it was not a food stall, but a balloon stall set up by several young people in the village. Customers could use money to exchange for small darts. 10 yuan for 5, 20 yuan for 12. And the attractive dolls on the side were their prizes. However, what Cici said was wrong. The big bear cub that she seemed to like very much wasn't a bear. How could Yang Yi not recognize the black and white color and the dark circles under its eyes that seemed to be covered in eyeshadow? This is a giant panda plushie. Seeing Yang Yi coming over, especially seeing Cici's shining eyes, a young man knew that there was a chance. He hurriedly came up and said, "If you can break the balloon with 3 of your 5 darts, you can get a third prize from us. If you can break the balloon with 4 darts, you can get a second prize from us." "What kind of result does the giant panda need?" "Hit all 5 darts." Yang Yi asked with a smile. Yang Yi was not interested in those small prizes, and she was only interested in the giant panda plushie. Now that the little girl saw her father talking to someone else, she did not dare to shout loudly. She leaned over to her father's ear and whispered, "Yes, I want this big bear baby. This is our special prize this time." The young man puffed out his chest and said proudly, "You have to spend 20 yuan to participate in the ultimate challenge. This time the challenge is 12 darts. As long as you hit 10 balloons, you can get our giant panda plushie." Obviously, this requirement was a bit high. There was an endless stream of people coming in, and a lot of small gifts were given out, but this obviously expensive giant panda plushie was still not one. "Give me 20 yuan. Yang Yi put Shi down and smiled as he took out the money. "B." The young man took it and eagerly prepared the darts for Yang Yi. Seeing that someone was playing the ultimate challenge, several guests who were throwing darts stopped one after another. Many tourists who were watching also came over to watch excitedly. Seeing so many people, Shi was actually a little nervous, so she grabbed her father's pants. However, she proudly puffed out her chest, clenched her small fist and whispered, "Papa, you can do it." The onlookers were all amused by Shi's cute appearance. "This child is so beautiful. So cute." She will be amazing when she grows up. She will definitely be a beauty. Uncle, you can do it. You can do it. Everyone was talking at once. Although it did not affect Young E, he still nodded at everyone and smiled as he patted Shishi's little head. If this was in the past, Young E would have ignored other people's voices. Now that he was influenced by the environment, or maybe it was because he became a father, his personality gradually became more easygoing. Young E was a master of cold weapons in his previous life. He played with guns, but his favorite weapons were knives and all kinds of small hidden weapons. How could these small darts stump him? Young E held the dart, raised his hand, and threw it casually. Uft! This was not the sound of a balloon exploding. The dart was stuck on the foam board next to the balloon. Young Yi's expression suddenly became awkward. That relaxed and casual look seemed to have become a joke. No way. How could it miss? Young Yi frowned. He felt that his technique and strength were very moderate. It was not much different from his previous life when he never missed. Young Yi did not believe it and tried again. Uft. The onlookers sighed in pity. Sigh. Darts are not thrown like this, right? Some people couldn't help but want to comment. In their opinion, throwing a dart was done after aiming for a long time. How could it be like Young E, who didn't even seem to aim and threw the dart with his hand from his waist? How could he possibly hit the target? But this time, Young E did not pay attention to them. He frowned and looked at the remaining 10 darts in his hand. So that's how it works. When Young E tried the second dart, he felt that there was a problem with the feel of the dart the moment it flew out. The boss had done something to the tail. When the dart flew out, it was difficult to maintain a relatively straight line due to air resistance. Although it was a parabola, it could be close to a straight line if the speed was fast enough. Therefore, the more accurate the aim, the more likely it was to miss. Young E found the problem and threw the next dart. Of the remaining 10 darts, Young E threw 8 of them and missed 2. Although Young E had grasped the trajectory of the darts, there were always a few that had been tampered with, but the deflection angle was different. Congratulations to this gentleman for winning the first prize. The young man saw so many onlookers and raised his voice. He was ready to take the first prize and take the opportunity to call on everyone to challenge him. No need, I will try again. Please collect the darts I used just now. I still want to challenge with them. Young E rejected his first prize and handed him another 20 yuan. Chapter 79. When she saw that her father didn't win the prize, Shishi's discomfort was written all over her face. Although the first prize dog plushie sent by the young vendor was a bit interesting, in the eyes of Shishi, who wanted a big bear cub, nothing could compare to her big bear cub. Young E understood his daughter's thoughts, so he didn't hesitate and directly asked for the next round of challenges. The onlookers, on the other hand, were kind-hearted and tried to persuade him. The first prize is not bad. Why are you so stubborn? It's very difficult to hit 10 darts. 10 yuan each time, 10 yuan each time. After a few times, it's enough to buy one. This scammer, if he really hit 10 darts, I don't think the boss would be willing to give it to him. When the young man heard this, he was really unwilling. He straightened his neck and said to the onlookers, why wouldn't he be willing to give it to him? If this boss hits 10 darts, of course, we will give him the special prize with both hands. Don't think that our first prize is cheap. This boss took our first prize for 10 yuan. We lost a lot. The young man said with some grievance. Of course, this was also an act. Although Young E lost a little by winning the first prize, he still made a profit overall. After all, most people threw darts like Hanzo's arrows. Whether they hit or not depended on fate. Moreover, even though Young E had won the first prize, they had gained a lot of popularity. There were still quite a few people who were itching to join in the fun. Some of them could not wait to pay up and line up to play in person. These were all future benefits. However, the discussion of the onlookers worried Shishi. The little girl pulled on her father's trouser leg. When her father squatted down and asked why, she pouted and whispered, I want a big bear cub. The little girl looked so wrong that Yang Yi's heart was about to melt. He smiled and patted Shishi's little shoulder and said, "Don't worry, watch Dad." Yang Yi took the 12 darts from the young man. He picked up one first, weighed it gently and touched the tail. It's quite decent. Someone next to them laughed out loud. "Don't be noisy, I'm so nervous." The person just now was slapped on the head by his companion. His companion looked nervously at Yang Yi, as if it wasn't Yang Yi throwing but him. Of course, Yang Yi was not affected by the discussions around him. He calmed down and felt the weight of the dart. Then, he suddenly shook his wrist and threw the dart out. This time his movement was not big, but he was good at using his strength. Bang! What a pleasant explosion! The dart pierced the balloon and stuck on the foam board. Wow! The onlookers cried out in surprise, and the cheers were endless. Sisi was actually a little afraid of the sound of balloons exploding. She covered her ears with her 2 little hands, but when she saw this scene, the little girl's eyes turned into 2 sweet crescent moons. Yang Yi's expression was very calm, as if he was wearing earplugs. He was unmoved. He picked up the second dart, felt the weight of the dart just like before, and then lowered his shoulder and shook his wrist. Pang! Another balloon exploded. Two. It was unknown when it started, but the audience had already started counting down loudly for Yang Yi. This accuracy was like shooting a willow leaf from 100 paces away, making them all Yang Yi's fans. There were more and more curious onlookers, and the young people at the stall didn't have time to worry about whether Yang Yi would take away their big prize. They even started to introduce some customers who wanted to play, and asked them to line up for money. They couldn't stop smiling. When Yang Yi threw the third last dart, and there were still 2 more in his hand, the onlookers finally saw the result they wanted to see. They all cheered, as if it wasn't Yang Yi who had won the special prize but them. Special prize, special prize, special prize. Nobody knew who took the lead, but they all shouted in unison. It was so lively and happy. She was the same. Her little face was red, and she was so excited that she waved her little fists. She was so affected by the atmosphere that she forgot that she was a little lady. The young man at the stall didn't have any reluctance at this time. He also wanted to strike while the iron was hot, so he proudly held the special prize, a panda doll that was half the height of a person. Then, like a referee in a boxing ring, he raised one of Yang Yi's hands. "Let us congratulate this challenger. He has won our special first prize." The young man shouted one more cheers and more onlookers. Yang Yi didn't care. He still looked calm and collected. On the other hand, Shishi looked at the big bear cub eagerly and couldn't help but jump in joy. The young man also took the opportunity to promote his game. "Here 5 yuan. Don't worry about losing the special prize. Also, our people are running back to get it now. As long as you dare to win, we dare to give it to you. There is no upper limit for the special prize." After saying that, he suddenly remembered something. He turned to Yang Yi a little nervously and whispered, "Brother, look, your daughter has already gotten what she wants. She won't play anymore, right?" Yang Yi was amused. He raised his right hand, and there were 2 remaining darts between his fingers. Suddenly he shook his hand, and the 2 darts were thrown out. They hit the 2 balloons at the edge of the foam board. This dazzling skill once again set off the exclamations of the onlookers. However, Yang Yi didn't have any intention of showing off. It was just a small scene. Yang Yi held the panda doll in one hand and held his daughter's hand with the other. He smiled calmly at the stunned young man. "Don't worry, we are going to play something else." Yang Yi left after winning the panda doll for his daughter. It was as if he was going to leave when the matter was done. He left a lot of popularity for the dart stall that he had casually cleared. She didn't want to sit on her father's neck and watch the show. She was so happy that she held her father's hand. She walked with a spring in her step. From time to time she would go around and touch the panda doll. Then, she would smile happily and go back to her father's right side. She, there is cotton candy. Do you want to eat cotton candy? Yang Yi was actually going to take his daughter back, but he happened to see a vendor selling cotton candy. He became interested. What's cotton candy? She curiously followed her father. She looked at the cloud-like thing and was a little surprised. Is this edible? Course it is. Yang Yi smiled. He held the panda doll in his right arm and held his daughter's hand tightly. Then he took out some money with his left hand. Boss, give me a cotton candy. Okay. At this time, the female boss with the big straw hat looked up. Yang Yi was stunned. She looked very familiar. Chapter 80. P.S. None of you guessed it right. Who said that she was a florist? Be reasonable, don't treat every female character as the female lead. Murphy is the only female lead. Oh right, she is also the female lead. Don't treat your daughter as the female lead, haha. It was a tanned and skinny girl. She looked a little immature, but she did things very quickly. She was even skilled at rolling the cotton candy. However, Yang Yi had seen this girl before. Please wait for a moment. The girl hadn't recognized him yet. She took Yang Yi's money and nodded politely at him and the little girl who had popped her head out of the panda plushie. Yang Yi was very curious. When the girl was almost done rolling the cotton candy, he finally couldn't help but ask, "Aren't you a student from Jiangqing Media University?" Of course, this question wasn't out of the blue. The girl was still wearing the Jiangqing Media University uniform. Yes, you recognized me. The girl admitted openly. She finished rolling the cotton candy and handed it over with a sincere smile. This is an extra large cotton candy. Your daughter can eat more. I hope the little girl will like it. She shyly hid behind and only popped her head out. Of course, seeing the little girl's smile, she also shyly responded with a shy smile. Thank you, big sister. Her voice was still very soft, but the girl still heard it. She smiled and said, "You're welcome. This is a gift from big sister." Yang Yi didn't care. He was curious about why the girl was in the cotton candy business. Last month, she and I were looking at the sea of flowers in Luoxia village. We were having a picnic in the forest at noon when we met you. Yang Yi saw that the girl couldn't remember, so he reminded her. This time the girl really remembered. Her memory wasn't bad. She smiled brightly. I remember now. So it was you. Your daughter was still resting at that time. I'm sorry to disturb you. You still remember. Of course. You even brought a lot of tools. This is the first time I've seen something like this when I was there as a volunteer. How can tourists be so well equipped? The girl smiled, revealing her white teeth. After pulling the cotton candy, it looked like a pure white cloud. However, Yang Yi, who liked to eat it while it was hot, did not care about destroying this beauty. He first tore a small ball of cotton candy and stuffed it into his mouth. It was very soft and melted in his mouth. A sweet and fragrant feeling filled his taste buds, leaving him with an endless aftertaste. Is it good? She watched curiously from the side. When she saw her father's satisfied expression, she couldn't help but say, "Papa, I want to eat too." She had eaten until her stomach was bloated, but she still couldn't resist her appetite. Yang Yi naturally wouldn't mistreat his daughter. He held the stick in his left hand and extended the cotton candy over. She couldn't wait to imitate her father's actions and wanted to try. You don't have to do it. You can eat it yourself, Yang Yi quickly said. The little girl's hands had already been covered with a lot of bacteria from grabbing here and there. Of course, Yang Yi himself was not clean, but his immune system was very strong, unlike Shi who was prone to diarrhea. The cotton candy seemed to have turned into glass fiber sugar. When it was eaten, it melted into syrup more easily than ordinary candy. She immediately realized this sweet taste. She was so happy that her eyes narrowed. However, she didn't have time to express her feelings and kept eating. Aren't you at school? Why did you come to the temple fair to sell cotton candy? Young-yi then asked the girl. This was his biggest doubt. Originally, when Young-yi saw the girl in front of him for the second time, he was still a little vigilant. He subconsciously thought that there was danger and wanted to leave the things and run away with Shi. Fortunately, he quickly realized that this was no longer the life of a fugitive in his previous life where he had to live in fear at all times. In the peaceful world of ordinary people, he had the identity of an ordinary person and was an ordinary stay-at-home dad. Who would be so bored as to want to deal with him? However, he was still used to the situation of this girl and wanted to know more about it. The girl was stunned for a moment. She didn't hide anything and openly talked about her situation. Ding Xiang was the girl's name, which also implied her origin. She was a Miao girl from the mountains of Xiang province. Xiang Meizi was indeed a very ordinary girl. She was a second-year student majoring in electronic media at Zhongqing Media University. Her background was clean, and at the same time her family was poor. During the school holidays, I will participate in some work-study activities outside of school to earn some living expenses. Ding Xiang's tanned skin revealed the shyness of a young girl. She said embarrassedly, "Just like the volunteer I saw the last time, he was actually paid." 2 months ago, Ding Xiang was dragged to the temple fair by her roommates. Then, she had the idea of setting up a stall at the fair. Last month, Ding Xiang gritted her teeth and bought some gadgets to sell. In the end, the business was good. The temple fair was indeed very popular and helped her earn half a month's living expenses. This time, Ding Xiang happened to find out from a lady who used to set up a stall that an old granny couldn't set up a stall because of her poor health. Therefore, Ding Xiang rented the old granny's cotton candy machine and sold cotton candy herself. This business was much more popular than buying gadgets. Moreover, cotton candy was simple and easy to make. Ding Xiang was kind-hearted and always made large amounts of cotton candy for her customers. Naturally, it attracted many people to buy it. I earned some for myself and I can give a portion to the old granny. She is so pitiful. The children at home don't take care of her and she can only rely on her own small business to make a living. Ding Xiang smiled. Her white teeth were in sharp contrast to her dark skin. Yang-yi nodded silently. He couldn't understand Ding Xiang's poverty and difficulties. After all, Yang-yi felt that all difficulties needed to be broken by oneself. All wealth and happiness needed to be fought for by oneself. He could appreciate Ding Xiang's hard-working attitude, but it was difficult for him to be moved by it. After getting the information he wanted, Yang-yi didn't stay for too long. After saying goodbye to Ding Xiang, he left with Shi. As for why he didn't give Ding Xiang some financial support. Please, Yang-yi wasn't a Virgin Mary who wanted to give money to a poor person. This wasn't Yang-yi's character. Moreover, from Yang-yi's point of view, this world was survival of the fittest. If one wanted to be above others, one had to put in 100 times the effort and not wait for others to support them. In Yang-yi's previous life, if he didn't rely on himself to fight his way out and relied on others to save him, he wouldn't have made it out of the training camp alive. Ding Xiang was a kind-hearted girl who didn't feel inferior and worked hard. Yang-yi felt that such a child would have a bright future. As for other things, he didn't have any other thoughts. Let her be tempered by suffering. Chapter 81. When Yang-yi took Sisi to visit the temple fair, the scandal between Mo Fei and Zhu Jie quietly subsided. After all, Zhu Jie's reputation was too bad, and Mo Fei was unwilling to cooperate with him. Therefore, several media outlets were stirring things up, as if they were clowns dancing, and the attention on them had decreased a lot. In addition, a more shocking thing happened in the entertainment industry not long ago. With almost no warm-up, Harbor City star Chen Yiji's new album, Long Time Not Seen, which he had been working on for 2 years, was released. However, under such circumstances, the sales of Long Time Not Seen in the first 2 days were jaw-dropping, breaking the number of 1 million. One must know that the market for Cantonese songs itself was limited, and it didn't have a huge audience like Mandarin. The Copyright Association set the standard for a Cantonese album's platinum album at 5 million copies. Obviously, with the current momentum, it was only a matter of time before Long Time Not Seen got the honor of a platinum album. Moreover, whether it was the industry or Chen Yijie's fans, almost all of them had the highest praise for this album. The good reputation was hyped up, and it naturally had a great impact on the sales of this album. Interestingly, because the album Long Time Not Seen was full of Cantonese songs, the second title song of the same name was a Mandarin version, so the Mandarin entertainment industry also paid attention to this news. Soon they found that the Mandarin song Long Time Not Seen was surprisingly good. As a result, in the vast Mandarin market, this song also began to spread. Although many people could only pay to download it through the internet, the popularity of this song had become a phenomenon. Who is Mu Xiang? More record companies and agencies responded quickly and cast their eyes on the two songwriters of the title song with different lyrics. However, because the Copyright Association's information was set to be unreadable by the author, those who were interested all ran into a wall. Of course, the popularity of Chen Yijie's new album was not good for Murphy. Although she bought the album to appreciate and learn, Murphy herself had to admit that the current level of attention she received had been affected, and this impact was reflected in the album sales. Murphy didn't care. Instead, she was very happy. She felt that the previous sales were too fake. She wanted real results, even if the results were very bad and would make her sad. However, she felt more relaxed than deliberately using scandals to cheat sales. After the deadline with Sister Ling, Murphy immediately asked Mo Shaowen to meet with a familiar reporter and officially clarified to the public, "I, Murphy, am still single. Ju Jie and I are just ordinary colleagues." The photos that were circulated before looked intimate because of the angle, but that's not the case. This clarification was very much like Murphy's style. Regardless of whether people would approve of it after it was released, it didn't cause much of a stir. The fans that had been lost due to the previous scandals were also difficult to recover. The sales of her album, which had exploded due to the scandals in the beginning, had once again slowed down and declined. Finally, Murphy's last album sales week has passed. Although her album can still be sold, it now depends on the mood of the owners of the major stores and music stores. In some ways, the sales of records in this world were a bit like the release of a movie. The Copyright Association explicitly required all sales channels to reserve the first few rows of shelves for records released within a month. Of course, whether it sold well or not and whether it was placed at the front depended on one's ability. To a certain extent, this protected the rights and interests of various creators, but it also made the competition in the record market more intense. Unless it was a boss who relied on feelings to support it, market factors often determined the retention of outdated records in their stores. Once this month was over, without the support of the Copyright Association's mandatory shelving month, records that didn't sell well would often be removed or left in an inconspicuous corner to eat dust. Obviously, Murphy's new album wasn't so good that it could still be retained after a month, especially in the very competitive entertainment industry of this world. According to the feedback from the company's marketing department, after the time point, Murphy's album sales began to decline in a precipitous manner from the next day onwards, with only a 2-digit daily increase. With such results, Murphy's blow was not only from the outside world's cynicism, but she could also clearly feel the change in the attitude of the other people in the agency towards her. There was less respect and praise from before, and more alienation and contempt. Mo Shaowen felt it even more deeply. She had just gone to the bathroom and rushed back angrily, saying, "What kind of people are they? Snobbish. They used to call me Sister Wan so sweetly, but now when we meet in the bathroom they don't even want to say hello. They even rolled their eyes and spoke in a strange voice." Mo Shaowen didn't want to tell Murphy that those people had said those unpleasant words, such as disdaining Murphy as a faded flower, saying that Murphy occupied the company's biggest resources and blocked the development path of the small female stars they followed. These words were infuriating, and Mo Shaowen didn't want Murphy to be in a bad mood after hearing them. "Forget it, we'll come back for the next album." Murphy put down the book in her hand and comforted her assistant cousin. Actually, other people's criticism isn't without reason. I was too anxious to make a comeback and didn't choose a good song. Murphy began to reflect on herself. Next time, I'd rather spend more time and have Sister Ling help me collect songs, choose good songs, and then polish them over and over again. I'm sure I'll be able to grind out a record that will satisfy the fans. Mo Xiaowan faintly sighed and said, Sister, you make it sound simple, but how many years will this grind take? Your contract with Sister Ling is about to expire at this time next year. Not to mention anything else, it's hard to say if Sister Ling is willing to sign a contract with us. It's not a contract, but a lot of things will be restricted in the future. There were some words that Mo Xiaowan didn't say out loud. She felt that the company wouldn't continue to invest a lot of resources in collecting songs for Murphy. Without good songs, it would be useless no matter how long they grind. What's more, what do we do during this time? Don't we have to eat? Just shut ourselves in the recording studio and practice. Mo Xiaowan said with a headache. The entertainment industry is very cruel, and the economic contracts are the same. If Murphy earns money, the management company will split a lot of it with her. If she doesn't earn money, the management company won't give them a single cent to spend. Then I'll tell Sister Ling that I'll take on a few more commercial performances every month. Murphy was a little unwilling, but still said stubbornly, Hey, sister, why are you working so hard? Mo Xiaowan couldn't help but ridicule. Yes, why? Murphy obviously wasn't doing it for money, nor was it for fame. Otherwise, she wouldn't have retired for Xixi. She also wouldn't have risked defending the TV station and rushed back to Zhongqing from Shanghai for Xixi. But she longed for this stage, longed for the state of singing for her fans on the concert stage. She liked singing and didn't want to give up so easily. But I can't give up, Murphy thought for a long time. Her conviction was once again firm. She said to Mo Xiaowan, Xiaowan, it's already very late. You should go back first. I'll listen to a few more songs to get the feeling. Mo Xiaowan didn't move. She sat in her seat and stared blankly at the computer. What's wrong? Xiaowan. Murphy was curious and walked over. Sister. Mo Xiaojuan's voice trembled with excitement. She pointed at the email page and asked, This name, Mu Xiang, where have I seen it before? Chapter 82. Mu Xiang. Murphy, who was still in a daze, walked over and looked at the email. Mo Xiaowan was Murphy's assistant and manager. Of course, she didn't just accompany Murphy everywhere and clean up after her. Other than the work arranged by the company, she also had to deal with many businessmen who were attracted by Murphy's fame. Then, she had to arrange Murphy's daily schedule. Not only that, Mo Xiaowan also had to help Murphy deal with her fans. It could be said that Mo Xiaowan didn't have as much free time as Murphy. In fact, she was even busier. For example, the email that Mo Xiaowan was using now was specially used to discuss collaborations. However, occasionally, fans would find this email and send some emails expressing their love for Murphy. From the title of the email that Murphy saw, it was very similar to this kind of email. To Murphy, a gift from an admirer. But since Mo Xiaowan brought it up in such a serious manner, Murphy read on curiously. The main text wasn't long. The general idea was that this fan was called Mu Xiang. He had admired Murphy for a long time and liked Murphy's singing very much. When he saw that Murphy's new album had suffered a setback, he felt indignant. He felt that it was because Murphy didn't choose her new songs well. Therefore, he offered 2 songs that he wrote for Murphy, hoping that she could pull herself together and make a comeback. Murphy understood that this wasn't an ordinary fan letter. This was a letter from a true fan. Murphy felt a burst of warmth in her heart. She felt that no matter how good this fan's songs were, she would definitely treat them seriously. Even if they weren't good, Murphy would definitely go to the recording studio to record a few tapes and send them to the fan to thank him for his concern and effort. However, when Mo Xiaowan saw Mo Fei's indifferent look, she became anxious instead. Elder sister, can't you see it? Tell what? Mu Xiang. Yeah, he's my fan. What's wrong? Murphy was puzzled. Mo Xiaowan rolled her eyes. She helplessly pushed her chair away and stood up. She hurriedly walked over to Murphy's cabinet and took down an album. Murphy recognized it at a glance. Wasn't it Chen Yiji's new album, Long Time No See, that she had asked someone to help her buy a few days ago? However, Murphy was still a little confused and couldn't wrap her head around it. Mo Xiaowan took it and pointed to the first 2 songs. Sister, who wrote these 2 songs? Murphy did not have to look at it this time. She suddenly understood. Mu Xiang. No wonder this name sounded so familiar. So he wrote Long Time No See, and Might As Well Not See Each Other for Chen Yijie. Murphy liked this album very much, especially these 2 songs. She had listened to the Cantonese song, Might As Well Not See Each Other, several times. Of course, Murphy could still speak Cantonese, because even though she grew up abroad, she had been developing in the mainland Chinese circle when she came back to China. But don't forget that Murphy's mother used to be a singer in Harbor City. Yeah. Sister, Mu Xiang wrote songs for you. Mo Xiaowan was so excited that her whole body trembled. He is also your fan. Murphy frowned. She was not as excited as Mo Xiaowan. She still said calmly. He shouldn't be Mu Xiang, right? How can there be such a coincidence? Of course, whether it was Mu Xiang or not, Murphy still asked Mo Xiaowan to download the music score and print it out with great interest. Sister, do you want a demo? Mo Xiaowan asked. Murphy hesitated for a moment and said, You can download it, but don't give it to me first. In the music field, a demo meant a sample record, and a demo usually meant that the composer recorded his general idea and gave it to the record company or the singer as a reference, which was the prototype of the song. But the big record companies usually ignored these demos, because they were worried that it would affect the performance of the singers. Murphy had the same idea. As a professional singer who had been famous for a long time, she preferred to sing with her own ideas. Opening the music score, Murphy was stunned when she saw the title of the first song, First Dream. Looking at the lyrics below, Murphy was silent. Sister, it's really written for you. Mo Xiaowan printed 2 copies and read the lyrics with great interest. She didn't know anything about music scores, so she exclaimed. Although Murphy didn't respond, her shocked and happy eyes had explained everything. Wasn't it written for her? If the dream didn't fall off the cliff, how would the persistent people have invisible wings? Weren't these lines about Murphy's current situation? Her dream had been thwarted and her wings were broken. Everyone was laughing at her, and they couldn't see her return and future. But Murphy still persisted on the path of her dream. Holding the first dream tightly in my hand, the place I wanted to go the most, how could I turn back halfway? The first dream will definitely be reached. Only when the true desire is realized can I be considered to have reached heaven. Murphy wanted to realize her music dream and continue to stand on the stage, because that was her heaven. Now, even if she couldn't return to the stage, Murphy didn't intend to give up. It's definitely Mu Xiang. Mo Xiaowan felt that her judgment was right. She shouted, Only Mu Xiang, who wrote Long Time No See, can write such good lyrics. Murphy didn't say anything. She actually agreed with Mo Xiaowan's statement, because she could feel the melody of the song from the process of reading the score. Even if the melody of the song was different from that of Long Time No See, Murphy believed that the composer who could write such a beautiful melody and lyrics that touched the depths of people's hearts had his own pride. How could he impersonate someone else's name? Before looking at the second song, Murphy couldn't wait to turn around and walk to her exclusive recording studio. She turned on the equipment inside and entered the score of The First Dream. The computer equipment would simulate the sound of the corresponding instruments and create the accompaniment. Of course, it couldn't be compared to playing the instruments, but it was enough for the time being. Murphy put on her headphones and closed her eyes. When the prelude was over, she hummed softly. If pride wasn't coldly taken down by the real sea. No, it wasn't like that. It seemed like she should have added a few keys at the beginning. Murphy frowned, dragged the progress bar and started again. These were the struggles that one had to go through when recording a song. For every song to get the best feeling in the album, one had to be like Murphy in the beginning. One had to repeatedly consider each word and sentence and repeatedly modify one's singing style. This period was very boring, but just like Yang Yi's cooking, the delicacy had to wait. Of course, Murphy could have chosen the simple mode. If she listened to the demo recorded by Yang Yi, although she only hummed vaguely, she would know the basic singing style. But what was the point of that? Murphy wasn't fan. She had her own style and her own voice. Naturally, she would perform her own brilliance. Mo Xiaowan stood outside the recording studio and helplessly patted her forehead. "AI, are we going to pull an all-nighter again?" She knew Murphy's style. When she worked, she didn't differentiate between day and night. Mo Xiaowan, who was Mo Fei's assistant and cousin, had no choice but to give up the idea of going home to sleep. She took her bag and went out to buy supper for Mo Fei. The first song was The First Dream. Guess which song was the second? Chapter 83. In the early morning of the weekend, everything was quiet. Even the chirping cicadas seemed to have felt the deep sleepiness of the weekend and were silent. Pa, pa, pa. A lonely figure appeared in the long corridor. Mo Xiaowan walked over with big and small bags. Even if the people on duty were still sleeping, Mo Xiaowan was used to this kind of loneliness. She wasn't afraid when she walked through the dark stairs. Fortunately, there were still a few rays of the morning sun shining in from the corridor. Several potted plants quietly bloomed under the sunlight, adding a bit of vitality. Mo Xiaowan opened the door to Murphy's exclusive studio and tiptoed in. What greeted her eyes was a somewhat messy workbench and a sleeping beauty curled up on the folding bed behind it. Mo Xiaowan put down the breakfast in her hands, then looked at Murphy and sighed inwardly. This workaholic. It's been a few days and she still hasn't stopped. After Murphy got the 2 good songs, she was like a treasure in the recording studio every day. Fortunately, she didn't have any jobs recently, but there was a commercial performance. Mo Fei asked Mo Xiaowan to turn it down, and it was only after Mo Xiaowan persuaded her that Mo Fei was willing to postpone it. Murphy probably stayed up until the wee hours of the morning before sleeping. Mo Xiaojuan's movements didn't wake her up. Mo Xiaowan shook her head, picked up the blanket that Murphy dropped on the ground, and covered her with it. At this critical time, Murphy couldn't catch a cold. Otherwise, she would be even crazier if she couldn't sing. Mo Xiaowan tidied up Murphy's workbench, tidied up some of Murphy's notes, and pressed them with a silver paperweight. Then, she quietly walked to the recording studio next door. As a loyal fan of her cousin, Mo Xiaowan was very interested in the progress of Murphy's audition. She skillfully turned on the machine, then put on the monitoring headphones and listened to the recording left by Murphy with relish. If pride wasn't coldly smacked down by the reality of the sea, how would we know how hard we have to work to go far? Murphy sang this song First Dream very smoothly. Her unique ethereal voice brought out the helplessness and struggle of the song. This was different from the demo that Mo Xiaowan heard. Mo Fei's singing was indeed very good. Just like the lyrics of "I can smell a kind of fragrance when I close my eyes when I'm tired," she was able to sing that kind of feeling of tiredness and laziness. It was very light, but as long as you listened carefully, you could feel it. However, don't think that this positive song was filled with negative energy because of Murphy's singing. Murphy sang the tiredness of the foreshadowing lyrics in the beginning, gradually transitioning to the lightness and excitement of the climax at the end. This transition didn't leave any trace at all. Mo Xiaowan, who was listening to the song, was also unknowingly infected by Murphy's emotions from the beginning. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly, as if she saw the dawn of a dream come true. If Sister Fei used this song as the main title of her comeback album, the sales would definitely be more than what it is now. After listening to the song, Mo Xiaowan secretly sighed. In this cruel and competitive entertainment industry, it was extremely difficult to make a comeback. The new album that had just suffered a setback was originally Murphy's best chance to make a comeback. After all, she had the status before her retirement and also had a lot of nostalgic fans. Unfortunately, she didn't grasp this opportunity and released an album with very bad results, squandering her original popularity in an instant. How difficult would it be to start afresh with a new album in the future, to gather popularity from scratch? Not to mention the quality of the future album. Just talking about Murphy's opponents, they wouldn't sit back and watch Murphy's development. They would definitely stop and attack Murphy with all their strength like in the past few months. How could it be easy to break through? The first song ended in Mo Xiaojuan's imagination. She came back to her senses and clicked on the second song. Love Me Don't Go. This song was also sent to Murphy by Mu Xiang through email. At first, Mo Xiaojuan felt that the quality of this song was not as good as the first song. Listening to the melody, she felt that it had a very strong Japanese, rhythm and blues flavor. Mo Xiaojuan didn't like this style of music, but Mo Xiaojuan was very surprised by Murphy. Murphy, who rarely sang blues, actually showed a strong interest in this song. Before she could think too much, the music started and Murphy's voice came immediately. At this time I'm still the same. The loneliness of the night makes people sad. I don't dare to think too much because I'm alone. Japanese songs were very free, but the singing was also very unique. Although Murphy rarely sang this type of song with her singing skills, she could still easily control it. That kind of psychedelic, gentle, lingering charm was sung by Murphy incisively and vividly. P.S. Although the original singer of this song was Zhang Yu, who plays hip-hop, the female version is also very good. Everyone can find Moen Wei's version to listen to. At the climax, Mo Xiaojuan finally heard Murphy's passionate side. Love me don't go if you say you don't love me. I don't want to hear you really say it. Give me a little more gentleness. In this section, Murphy sang a little hysterically. It was different from the previous versions that Mo Xiaojuan had heard. In the past, Murphy sang in a free and easy way and also sang in a sad way. But it had never been like this, singing in such a helpless and sad way. Mo Xiaojuan let out a heavy sigh. She understood what he meant. Murphy's song wasn't sung for Yang Yi, nor was it sung for some other man. Murphy was venting out the unspeakable urge to keep her fans who had left. The lyrics of this song were indeed very simple, unlike Mo Xiaojuan's favorite Long Time No See, which lacked variety. The second section was just a simple repetition of the first section. At that time she had complained to Murphy that this song Mu Xiang didn't write seriously enough, and didn't seem like his ability. However, what could be better than repetition to express one's emotions? The moonlight elongates my shadow, walking aimlessly on the cold street. I don't have news of you because I miss you. Mo Fei did not stop as he did in the first section. Instead, he raised his voice and sang an impromptu blues song, transitioning the melody to the climax. Love me don't go if you say you don't love me. At this time, Murphy's singing changed again. It wasn't as emotional as in the first section, but slowly sank from the high notes, singing with a heavy heart. Love me don't go. Murphy sang until the end. Her tone was a little sad. This was very rare. In the past, she rarely expressed such emotions directly. At most, she hid it in a roundabout way, requiring the listener to carefully experience it. Perhaps she really hoped that those fans who liked her would love me don't go. Chapter 84. While Murphy was practicing her song diligently, Yang Yi was not idle. He did 3 big things in the past few days. The first thing was to reach a cooperation agreement with Fu Jun, the boss of Sahara Publishing House. Yang Yi would invest 5 million yuan and get 49% of the shares of Sahara Online Bookstore. Fu Jun refused at first. Although the project of running Sahara Online Bookstore was not very profitable, he treated it as his own private toy and didn't want others to touch it. But Sahara Publishing House needed the physical copyright of Yang Yi's 2 books, so Fu Jun still came. As a result, He was attracted by Yang Yi's top-notch Blue Mountain coffee and was also impressed by Yang Yi's advanced concept of online development. Fu Jun was the first person Yang Yi met who knew coffee and liked coffee, so he took out his treasured Blue Mountain coffee and shared it with Fu Jun. Fu Jun himself couldn't figure out whether it was the coffee or the philosophy that made him drunk. He decided to call Yang Yi his brother and sold 49% of his online bookstore shares for 5 million. Of course, Sahara Online Bookstore was not worth 10 million yuan now. It seemed that Yang Yi had become a fool, but Fu Jun couldn't help but mutter, "I'm the one who lost a lot. According to what you said, my online bookstore can develop into a giant. I will definitely regret selling so many shares to you for 5 million yuan." Yang Yi smiled and patted him on the shoulder and said, "Do it well and strive to make Sahara as big as I said. By then, you will be a giant in the publishing industry. Even if you lost a little, I will allow you to come to my shop to drink coffee in the future. I will make it for you personally. Blue Mountain Luwak cat poop coffee. Mand Helena, as long as I have it, you can drink it." Only then did Fu Jun leave with a smile on his face. Well, regarding the business part of the internet, Xiaohan will mention it briefly. These are just to make some money, so there is no need to describe it in detail. Everyone probably doesn't want to see the business war. The remaining two big things Yang Yi did were related to rejection. He rejected the olive branch thrown by Tianxiang Records. Speaking of the size of the company, Tianxiang Records was still a little shabby in Hong Kong, where every inch of land was worth gold. But in terms of scale and power, Tianxiang Records was not an existence that Murphy's Tianmei Entertainment could look up to. Although the producer of Chen Yijia's new album and the deputy music director of Tianxiang, Mao Su, had recommended Yang Yi to Hu Yongxiang as an excellent songwriter, Hu Yongxiang was really forgetful and forgot about it when he got busy. It wasn't until Chen Yijia's new album was released and its results were dazzling in Hong Kong that Hu Yongxiang thought of Yang Yi, a young man who was highly recommended by his father. But to everyone's surprise, in the face of Tianxiang's olive branch, Yang Yi nonchalantly rejected it. "Help! Could it be that you've already accepted other companies' offers?" Mao Su personally came to Zhongqing to meet Yang Yi because he wanted to become colleagues with Yang Yi and then discuss the true meaning of music together. But he didn't expect to be rejected. He was very surprised. "No, it's just that I prefer freedom and don't like to be restrained." Yang Yi smiled faintly. "If there's a chance, we can continue to work together, but not in the way of signing songwriters. I like to write my own music, not the music you want." As a musician, Mao Su could understand Yang Yi's idea very well. He nodded with some regret. "By the way, please keep my personal information confidential. I don't want my life to be disturbed," Yang Yi added. Mao Su smiled. "Of course we Tianxiang are not so tasteless. Besides, we don't want you to be targeted by our competitors. You're such an excellent songwriter. We'll have many opportunities to work together in the future." This rejection was a result that both sides could accept. However, the rejection of the third major matter was a little unpleasant. Previously, it was mentioned that the editors of Taijun.com wanted to poach Yang Yi to regain their lost popularity. They instructed a familiar publishing house to inquire about him. At that time, the people from the publishing house also came with manager Huang of Qiyu. Of course, they were also rejected. However, the editors of Taijun.com got hold of Yang Yi's address. So Ling Yunju brought fishball and rushed over excitedly. He wanted to use his silver tongue to persuade Yang Yi to join Taijun. "Yang Yi, you used to be a soldier, right?" "Me too. One look and I can tell that we have a special interest in military literature." Ling Yunju played the emotional card. Although Yang Yi received them in a friendly manner, he said that he had a 3-year contract with Qiyu. "It's okay." Ling Yunju patted his bald head and said enthusiastically, "Taijun.com has a strong background. Have you heard of army literature? As long as you're willing, we can recruit you under the name of the army. Who would dare to stop us?" Ling Yunju did not know that his words made Yang Yi unhappy. One had to know that Yang Yi was most disgusted by people who talked about their background. Moreover, the reason why his predecessor had retired was that he had offended someone with a strong background. Although it had nothing to do with the current Yang Yi, it was still a living memory in his mind. Yang Yi could empathize with it. No need. Chi Yu's offer is not bad. Yang Yi's voice became a little cold. However, Ling Yunju and Fishball did not feel it. Fishball even shouted, "Chi Yu is nothing. Is it comparable to Taijun? Calm in terms of military literature. If you join Taijun, calm, I guarantee that your results will be much better than Chi Yu's." Yang Yi did not deny this. After all, Taijun, calm was the real gathering place of military fans. However, the problem was that even if the editors of Taijun, calm did not make Yang Yi feel disgusted, he would not be willing to join Taijun, calm. This was because Yang Yi did not like military literature. Since he did not like it, why would he change to another website to continue writing military literature? Military literature was just something that Yang Yi used to pass time. He had already thought of what to write for his next book. Moreover, it was definitely not going to be military literature. Of course, Yang Yi would not tell Ling Yunju and Fishball this. He only shook his head and looked at the clock in the cafe. He said calmly, "Sorry, it's almost time. I have to prepare dinner for my daughter." This meant that he was sending them off. Ling Yunju did not look happy. As the deputy editor of Taijun, calm, he had never been treated like this. "You will regret it," Ling Yunju said angrily and left with Fishball. Fishball followed behind Ling Yunju and got into a taxi. However, he was young and impetuous. He could not help but ask, "Xiao Ling, are we just going to let it go? Are we just going to let them read and suppress us?" Ling Yunju's face was gloomy. He said coldly, "Let it go? How is that possible? Fishball, go back and keep an eye on his physical publishing progress. Also, isn't Drawing Sword nearing its finale? Check when his new book will be released." Refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit. He will definitely regret this. Chapter 85. Last week, the second title song of Chen Yijie's new album, Long Time No See, became popular in China. Yang Yi's shop, which was named the coffee shop on the street corner, received the attention of some students and spread among the student body. Although they felt that it was more likely to be a coincidence, there were always some students who came to East Gate to drink coffee. They even forced Yang Yi to play the song again and again. Made Yang Yi want to vomit. Because of this coincidence, Yang Yi's coffee shop had an unexpected increase in popularity last week. It went from a situation where there were at most 3 or 4 customers a day to a situation where there was almost no shortage of customers in the afternoon. Although it was still not a lot, only about 20 customers a day, at least it looked like there was hope for a return. Unfortunately, the good times did not last long. In the blink of an eye, it was July. Zhongqing Media University was also on holiday. The students gradually left the university. Yang Yi's coffee shop became deserted again. However, Yang Yi was still very happy. He liked this half-dead state. It allowed him to read books and listen to music. "Why don't I close the shop and take a few days off?" Yang Yi had such an idea. Actually, he had only opened the shop for a few days. He would close the shop from time to time and take his daughter out to play. A boss like him would lose money no matter what he did. The good news was that Shi, who had gone home to stay with her mother for a few days, was finally back. Murphy also followed Shi to Yang Yi's house for dinner. She, who was a little tired and confused before, found her confidence again. The cold, arrogant girl in sunglasses appeared in front of Yang Yi again. However, this time she came with her luggage. "Recently, I've been a little tired from practicing songs. Xiaowan asked me to take a break and come out for a walk." Murphy no longer had to maintain a cold look in front of Yang Yi. Although her expression was still a little cold, her voice was very soft. "I don't know where I can go, and I'm afraid of being photographed by reporters. Can I just stay at your house for 2 days? Is that okay?" Yang Yi didn't need to ask to know that his 2 songs had worked. Previously, he had received a thank you email from Mo Fei. He didn't know if it was written by Mo Fei or Mo Shaowen. Of course. Yang Yi smiled and reached out his hand. Murphy understood and handed the luggage in her hand to Yang Yi. Then she held her daughter's hand and followed Yang Yi upstairs. "Mom, are you going to live with Papa like Shishi?" Shishi was very excited. This was the scene she had been looking forward to. She couldn't help but jump up the stairs. Shishi didn't walk properly. She had to jump up every time to go up the stairs. "Yeah, but it's only for 2 days, Murphy said faintly. "Mom still has work, so she has to go back in 2 days. "'Kay then." Shishi was still very happy. She tilted her head and said innocently, "Then tonight will Papa and Mom sleep with Shishi?" This question, Yang Yi, who was carrying the luggage, couldn't help but stiffen for a moment. Murphy's cold and elegant face couldn't help but blush. She secretly glanced at Yang Yi's back and waist, and her tone was no longer calm. She said reproachfully, "Shishi, what nonsense are you talking about? Tonight you sleep with Mom. Your Papa will sleep alone." Murphy raised her voice so that Yang Yi could also hear it. Yes, there are still many rooms upstairs. Papa will tidy them up later. There's no need to worry about not having a room to sleep." Yang Yi walked to the corner of the stairs. He glanced at Murphy awkwardly and then said to Shishi, "Is that so?" Shishi pouted her small mouth and said unhappily, "But Shishi wants Papa and Mom to accompany me." However, Yang Yi and Murphy didn't respond at this time. Both of them felt that this topic was a bit awkward. Although Yang Yi was more open, when he exchanged glances with Murphy, there was a hint of inquiry. "In your dreams?" Murphy glared at Yang Yi in annoyance. Then she turned her head, and her neck was a bit red. Although Murphy grew up abroad, in fact, her family was very traditional. Therefore, she had always been a very conservative woman. Otherwise, when Yang Yi saved her, it wouldn't have been the first time. Home, naturally, Yang Yi personally cooked. Every time he made new and novel dishes for Murphy, but no matter what kind of dishes he made, they were all delicious. This made Murphy, who was somewhat picky about food, even began to taste the celery that she almost didn't eat before. "It's not bad, right?" Yang Yi saw Murphy's second chopstick. He smiled and said, "I chose the more tender celery, cut it into small pieces, and then stir-fried it with tofu and wood ear. The original taste of celery will be much lighter and more delicious." Murphy's eating posture was still very elegant. When she ate a piece of celery, she picked it up like a little hamster and nibbled it bit by bit. She didn't want to open her mouth, as if it would affect her image. On the other hand, she ate more happily. She was presumptuous in her father's house. Her small spoon spilled the rice in the bowl all over the table. Yang Yi, a guy with obsessive-compulsive disorder, actually felt very uncomfortable every time he saw Shishi like this. But gradually he got used to it. Anyway, since it was going to spill, he would clean it up after dinner. But Shishi didn't like celery. She shook her head and asked her father to take the celery out. Then she pointed to the white tofu and said, "I don't want to eat celery. Celery tastes bad. Shishi likes to eat this." You can't be picky about food. Children should eat everything to have a balanced nutrition. Murphy, however, insisted on giving Shishi a big piece of celery with her chopsticks and seriously educated her. Suddenly, Murphy turned her head and glared at Yang Yi, who was beaming with joy, and said, "What are you laughing at? Did I say something wrong?" Yang Yi smiled and shook his head. He said, "You're still talking about Shishi. When I was cooking just now, who was the one who said that she didn't want to eat celery?" "That's right. She thought that she was supported by her father." She pouted her small mouth and agreed. He was educating his daughter. This guy, he actually dared to undermine her. Murphy was so angry that she didn't want to show the scene of parents quarreling in front of Shishi. Below the table, she stretched out her leg and kicked Yang Yi. But who knew that she would accidentally kick Yang Yi's face bone? It was so hard that she almost twisted her foot. Ouch! Murphy frowned and sucked in a breath of cold air. Yang Yi's reaction was actually a little slow. In a comfortable environment, he lowered his guard a lot. He only reacted when Murphy kicked him. But his movements were very fast. He subconsciously reached out and grabbed Murphy's foot. It was smooth to the touch like brocade. Murphy was still wearing black stockings. Yang Yi didn't realize that something was wrong. Instead, it was this feeling that made him subconsciously touch it. From the ankle to the foot. It was petite, warm and smooth. He now felt that something was wrong. He raised his head and saw Murphy, who was frowning in pain but looking at him with shame and anger. Oh no! Chapter 86. At this moment, time seemed to be frozen and stopped with the intersection of their eyes. At this moment, the air seemed to be filled with an awkward atmosphere. A drop of cold sweat slid down from Yang Yi's forehead. At this moment, Yang Yi wished he could dig a hole and hide in it. He didn't dare to look directly at Murphy, but he still had an idea. He squeezed out a smile and said, "Well, didn't you say it was painful? Let me have a look." She had no idea what was going on under the table. She found that she couldn't understand the conversation between her parents. With a puzzled look, she looked at her parents for a while and then at her mother for a while. Murphy's face was very hot, especially when her daughter was looking at her. She bit her lower lip and said angrily, "I'm fine. Let go of me." Only then did Yang Yi come to a sudden realization. He hurriedly let go of her hand, but the soft and smooth feeling on his fingertips still lingered. Both of them lowered their heads and kept their mouths shut in tacit agreement. They didn't say anything, but she had something to say. She pestered her father and said coquettishly, "Papa, help me take the celery out." She doesn't like celery. Yang Yi felt guilty. He stood on Murphy's side this time. He coughed twice and said, "No, your mother is right. You have to eat everything. Some celery. It's good for your stomach." Celery was rich in vitamins, carotenes and many kinds of mineral elements that the human body needed. It had the effect of strengthening the stomach and promoting blood circulation, clearing the intestines and relieving the bowels. She usually ate a lot of meat and liked sweets. Sometimes she would have a stomachache because of the imbalance of nutrition. "Papa, can you take some away? I'll only eat a little, okay?" The little girl bargained. Of course, the amount of celery that Mo Fei gave Cici was a bit too much. Looking at it, Cici wrinkled her nose like a bitter gourd. Yang Yi had no choice but to take some away for Shi. The little girl barely managed to eat a few stalks of celery. After eating, Shi pushed the bowl away, jumped down from the chair and said, "I'm done." Then, she ran away as if she was afraid that her father would make her eat celery again. Yang Yi and Murphy watched helplessly as their daughter ran to the side to play with her toys. But when she turned around and their eyes met, the awkwardness returned. The two of them didn't seem to be used to the feeling of being alone. It was even more awkward than being strangers. Moreover, it wasn't just awkward. There was an indescribable ambiguity that made the two of them feel uncomfortable from time to time. "Ahem, you should eat more celery too." Yang Yi tragically found that he couldn't leave the topic of celery tonight. In order to break the silence, he tried to find something to talk about. "You have a bad appetite. I'll try my best to cook Chinese dishes for you these days." Murphy couldn't help but ask, "How do you know that my stomach is not good?" Mo Shaowan knew her situation better, but Mo Shaowan didn't get along with Yang Yi. The two of them basically couldn't talk, so it couldn't be Mo Shaowan who told Yang Yi. Could it be Shi? "I saw it on TV. Yang Yi scratched his head, thought carefully and said, "It seems to be Yongcheng TV station something to tell you." It was a talk show. Before Murphy released her album, she was arranged by the company to participate once. Yang Yi happened to be watching TV with Shi at home. He accidentally pressed the button and watched for a while. Murphy was silent. She didn't know how to express it, or rather, she didn't dare to express it. A warm feeling flowed in her heart. She was very touched. At night, Yang-yi moved to the guest room. Murphy and she slept in the master bedroom. Although they slept in Yang-yi's bed, Yang-yi changed the bedsheets and quilt. Also, Yang-yi's room was so clean that it was almost spotless. It was Murphy's first time staying there, but it was more comfortable than a hotel or her own bedroom. She lay on the bed. The pleasant smell of soap came from the pillow. Unknowingly, she gradually fell asleep. The night was quiet. The next day, just as the sky was turning bright, the chirping birds outside the window woke Murphy up. Although she got up early, she also went to bed early. Amofe stretched herself, got out of bed, opened the curtains, and looked at the banyan tree outside the balcony and the Grand Canal in the distance. With a wide view, Amofe only felt refreshed and very comfortable. She hadn't slept so well in a long time, right? Not to mention that Murphy's black and white state was reversed after she received the 2 songs Mu Ziong some time ago. Murphy hadn't slept well in the past 6 months since she decided to make a comeback. She was under a lot of pressure. Only today, on Yang-yi's bed. Cough cough. It should be said that on Yang-yi's bed, Murphy found the feeling of sleeping well for the first time in 6 months. Almost without any thoughts in her mind, she slept until dawn. It was still early. Murphy looked at the time and closed the curtains again. Then, she tidied up the nightgown that was a little exposed when she slept. She hesitated for a moment, but didn't put on a coat. She pushed open the bedroom door and walked out. However, there was no trace of Yang-yi at home. Where did he go? Amofe saw that Yang-yi's room was also empty, and the bed was neatly made. The only difference from the barracks was that Yang-yi didn't fold the quilt like a piece of tofu, and the quilt was very sharp. In the bathroom, Murphy saw that her hair was messy and her eyes were a little swollen after waking up. In fact, she was still very beautiful. She was shocked and didn't have time to look for Yang-yi. She quickly went back to the bathroom to get facial cleanser and skincare products. She went to the bathroom to wash up and tidy herself up. After a long time, Murphy finally finished tidying up her personal appearance. Just as she was tidying up the messy things, there was a movement outside. Murphy was worried about Shishi, so she hurriedly opened the door and went out. She happened to bump into Yang-yi, who was exercising and buying groceries. When Yang-yi went to exercise, he usually wore simple clothes. Today he only wore a sports vest, and it was all wet with sweat. His strong muscles seemed to be smeared with oil, and the vest was stretched tight. The strong visual impact almost made Murphy feel suffocated. You. Murphy stuttered. She couldn't stop her heart from beating wildly. A hot breath spread from her chest to her neck, and then dyed her 2 delicate and small ears red. You're awake. Yang-yi was also a little flustered. He quickly glanced at Murphy's body and face, then raised the bag in his hand and said, I went to buy groceries. Well, I'll go to the kitchen to prepare breakfast first. Murphy didn't know how sexy she was now. She was tall and beautiful, and she had done her image management in the morning, so that she looked as beautiful as usual. But what Murphy didn't notice was that the nightgown she was wearing just now had a big hole in the neckline. Her swan-like slender neck, V-shaped delicate collarbone, delicate and clear skin, and faintly discernible mountain range. Yang-yi swept his eyes over her. Although Yang-yi was not inexperienced, he had been holding back for too long. Moreover, he didn't know why Murphy had a special attraction to him. With just one glance, Yang-yi felt his little brother was rapidly expanding. Are you kidding me? Afraid of making a fool of himself, he couldn't even speak properly and hurriedly ran into the kitchen. Murphy was busy with her own business, so of course, she didn't notice Yang-yi's strange behavior. She went back to the master bedroom and sat for a long time to calm down. How can I have no self-control? Almost at the same time, Murphy and Yang-yi secretly blamed themselves. Chapter 87. P.S. I'm going to Sanjiang this afternoon. Thank you, Great Hushua, for your favor and Wutong for your support. This awkwardness had always existed faintly, but the two of them didn't like to express such extreme emotions. Therefore, when they sat together again, the two of them tacitly kept their mouths shut about what had just happened. Before lunch break, Murphy came to the guest room, which was Yang Yi's bedroom. She leaned against the doorframe and said, "Yang Yi, I want to discuss something with you." Yang Yi nodded and sat up on the bed. He wanted Murphy to sit on the chair, but Murphy didn't want to, so she just stood there. "I think that it's time to let Shishi go to kindergarten." Murphy hesitated for a moment before saying this. Yang Yi frowned, so he subconsciously said, "Why? Why do you want her to go to kindergarten? If you don't have time to take care of Shishi, then let her stay at my house." He didn't notice that his voice had been rising as he spoke. "That's not what I meant. It's not because I don't have time to take care of Shishi that I want to send her to kindergarten." Murphy didn't expect Yang Yi to have such a big reaction. She was a little uncomfortable with Yang Yi's agitated appearance. Murphy explained very seriously, "I'll arrange for Shishi to go to the best kindergarten in Jiangqing and let her receive the best bilingual education. She'll also have to learn music and drawing." If there was a word to describe Murphy, it would undoubtedly be tiger mother. She felt that she should receive the best education like she did when she was young. Moreover, she should develop in all aspects of morality, intelligence and physical health. If it weren't for the fact that she was too young, Murphy would probably have made she attend all kinds of training classes and learn all the 4 arts, just like other mothers. But Yang Yi didn't think so. Whether it was in his previous life or this life, in the memory of his predecessor, he had received the kind of carefree education. In fact, Yang Yi felt that learning was only forced by the requirements of the assassin profession. He took the initiative to learn, was willing to learn, and studied desperately to achieve his current achievements. He did not think that kindergarten could teach Shishi anything at all. If he really took it out to practice, the teachers in the kindergarten who taught music, chess, calligraphy, and painting were really no match for him. Therefore, Yang Yi said unhappily, "I can teach you at home too. Why must we go to kindergarten?" These words annoyed Murphy. She had forgotten that she actually had other reasons to persuade Yang Yi. She bit her lower lip and said angrily, "Yang Yi, don't think that just because you didn't have the conditions to receive a high-end education from a young age, Shishi should walk the same path as you. Shishi will go to university in the future and study for a master's degree. I don't want her to be like you, who didn't even get a high school diploma." These words were a bit too much, and Murphy regretted it as soon as she said them. But she was still angry, and she didn't know how to take the initiative to apologize. She regretted it one moment, and then found an excuse to tell herself that it was Yang Yi who deserved to be scolded. She was so conflicted that she turned her head away angrily. Murphy didn't see that Yang Yi's eyes suddenly became cold. Murphy probably didn't realize how hurtful her words were. Yang Yi didn't know that the emotions of his predecessor had a huge impact on him. The Yang Yi of the past had always been brooding about 2 things in his relationship with Murphy. The first was that he felt that Murphy looked down on him because he was poor, and the second was that he felt that Murphy looked down on him because of his low education and low social status. Although they were both self-righteous, it had to be said that the current Yang Yi was also a person with a strong sense of self, and it was easy for him to be influenced by such emotions. He was very unhappy with Murphy's words. "So what if you don't have a diploma? Is having a diploma that great?" Yang Yi felt that in his previous life, he didn't even go to school and didn't even have a diploma. But in terms of ability, he was much better than those graduates from famous universities. The relationship between the two of them had become closer during this period of time, but a crack appeared again. Maybe they hadn't noticed it yet, but Yang Yi subconsciously wanted to distance himself from Murphy. "Although I didn't study much, I'm still qualified to teach Shishi some basic knowledge," Yang Yi said coldly. "Besides, a child should have a happy childhood, and not have painful memories in school. I'd rather she play for a few more years than go to school in a hurry. The last sentence was actually a summary that Young E had made from those parenting books. Most experts thought that preschool education was unnecessary, and it was too rushed. It wasn't good for a child's physical and mental health. But Murphy wouldn't read the opinions of these experts. She was concerned about she's future development. Young E, don't be so naive, okay? If she doesn't learn these things, she'll be far behind others when she goes to school. Murphy turned her head and said angrily, "It's like a 100-meter race. Your starting point is 10 or 20 meters behind others. How can you catch up?" Well, it seemed that today Young E and Murphy were bound to have a big fight on this topic. But just as Young E and Murphy were in a deadlock, a little person poked her head out. "Ah, you're all here with Papa." The little girl with bright eyes and white teeth giggled. She was ready to go to bed, but after waiting for her mother to come back, she jumped out of bed curiously and ran out barefoot. She's appearance immediately diluted the smell of gunpowder between Young E and Murphy. Although Murphy was still brooding, she and Young E put down the dispute at the same time. Her gaze fell on she's feet and said angrily, You're not wearing slippers again. I want to sleep with Papa." She twisted her body and nimbly dodged her mother's hand. She laughed like a silver bell and ran toward her father. In the blink of an eye, she had already climbed onto her father's bed. Fortunately, Young E wiped the floor clean every day. Although she was barefoot, she was not too dirty. However, Young E, a guy with obsessive-compulsive disorder, looked here, the corner of his mouth twitched, and he felt a little helpless. He would have to wash the sheets again later. "Young Xiaoxi, come down, go back to sleep," Murphy ordered. She quickly got into her father's arms. She stuck out her messy little head, and then naughtily made a face at her mother. "No, I want to sleep with Papa. Papa will tell me stories." "I can tell you stories too." Murphy felt a little wronged. "But Papa's stories are the best." She's black gem-like eyes turned and she suggested, "Mom, why don't you come too? We'll sleep with Papa together." Bah, children's words carry no harm. Blown away by the wind. Murphy was blushed by her daughter. She even glared at Young E, who had an innocent face, and turned to go out. "Then you sleep with your Papa, I'm leaving." "Bye, Mom." She did not look back at all. She giggled and waved her hand, full of joy. This time she could have Papa alone. Chapter 88. Murphy's vacation ended soon. She only stayed at Young E's house for 2 days. Although the two had a lot of awkwardness in these 2 days, their relationship didn't develop further. On the contrary, because of the dispute over whether she should go to kindergarten, Murphy's words caused a crack in their relationship. It was unknown how long it would take to mend this crack. But what was known was that at present, Young E and Murphy couldn't reach an agreement on whether she should go to kindergarten or not. Less than 2 days after Murphy left, Young E received a letter from Harbor City. It was personally transcribed and sent by Chen Yijie. The content of the letter naturally couldn't avoid thanking Young E for the support of the 2 songs, which allowed him to get the honor of platinum album early, and also allowed him to return to the ranks of super first-rate singers. On July 23rd, I'm going to hold a concert at Zhongqing's Hongren Fong Music Hall. I sincerely invite you and your family to come and watch. Chen Yijie also sent 5 concert tickets with the letter, all of which were VIP seats in the front row. It turned out that after Chen Yijie launched his new album, he also launched the plan of a national concert tour that had been suspended for 2 years. Harbor City was naturally the first and last stop, but he unexpectedly listed Zhongqing, which wasn't originally on the list, as the second stop. Obviously, he came to repay Young E. Chen Yijie's original popularity was no less than Murphy's. Although he had reduced his activities in the past 2 years and concentrated on preparing his new album, his fans were more loyal than many celebrities. Coupled with the success of his new album this time, his popularity and limelight were unparalleled for a while. Before the concert tickets in Harbor City went on sale, there was a long queue outside several sales points. Then, in less than an hour, all the tickets were sold out. It was the same in Zhongqing. Not only the fans in Zhongqing, but also fans in Shanghai and other nearby cities came to buy tickets. There were even fans who couldn't get tickets in Harbor City who flew thousands of miles away. The tickets for the concert in Zhongqing were also sold out in less than a day. This was the speed of the pre-internet ticketing era. After Yang Yi saw this news, he felt that if the tickets were sold online, they would probably be sold out in a few minutes. Because the tickets were so popular, Yang Yi felt that Chen Yiji's gift was too sincere. These 5 VIP tickets were closer to the stage than the inner hall. Even if there were no scalpers, the original price would be tens of thousands of yuan. Moreover, there were people who were frantically trying to buy it. Even if they had the money, they might not be able to buy it. But Yang Yi didn't need so many. So, he and she would at most be able to watch it, right? He couldn't possibly give Murphy the tickets of other celebrities, right? Take her to a concert. Yang Yi wasn't so heartless. Wasn't he deliberately trying to annoy Murphy? Yang Yi had already planned to send the remaining 3 tickets back to Chen Yijie. At this time, Guozi called. Brother Yang, hurry up and watch TV. It's Zhongnan Satellite TV. Don't ask me why. Watch it first, he. In a burst of proud laughter, the little fatty hung up the phone. Yang Yi was a little confused, but he still turned on the TV. Shi, who was playing with toys, saw this and ran over quickly. She snuggled up to her father and said sweetly, Papa, are you going to let Shi watch cartoons? After Murphy came over, she corrected many of Yang Yi's bad habits of taking care of the children. One of them was letting Shi watch too much TV. In the past, Yang Yi could be said to be obedient to Shi. As long as the little girl didn't sit so close to the TV screen, he allowed Shi to turn on the TV and press the remote control to watch it by herself. It turned out that as long as it was something attractive, the children's learning ability was very strong. Shi could remember the operation of the remote control after watching it several times. But now, Shi's good days were over. According to Murphy's instructions, Yang Yi could only let Shi watch TV for 2 hours a day at most. Moreover, these 2 hours had to be divided into 2 parts, and she needed to rest for a few hours in between. Therefore, Shi looked at her father eagerly for the whole afternoon. Finally, her father turned on the TV. Not cartoons. Papa wants to watch Zhongnan Satellite TV. Yang Yi was not as proficient as the little girl. He had to press the buttons one by one to find a local channel. Okay then. Shi pursed her lips, but she didn't choose to go away. Instead, she hugged her father's hand and squeezed into his arms. Her big eyes were very clever. She looked at the TV for a while and then looked at her father for a while. She was probably thinking about something in her heart. When Papa doesn't watch TV, will it be Shi's turn to watch cartoons? Finally, they found Zhongnan Satellite TV. The news anchor on the TV was introducing the results of this year's college entrance examination in Zhongnan province. At the same time, the cutoff score for liberal arts was announced. The results of the college entrance examination were announced the day before yesterday, right? Did Guozi want to tell Yang Yi how he did in the exam? But what did he mean by letting Yang Yi watch the news? Could he know whether he did well or not just by watching the news? Just when Yang Yi was confused, the news came to the segment where the reporters interviewed the top students of the liberal arts and science subjects. The appearance of the little fatty appeared on TV. Hey, isn't this Uncle? She reacted quickly and cried out in surprise. Yes. Yang Yi also saw it. He was shocked. This guy was the top student of science. And not only was he the top student of science in Zhongqing City, but the title given to Guozi on TV was the top student of science in Zhongnan province. Papa, is this Uncle Z? She shook her father's hand and asked. Yes, it's him. Yang Yi wanted to say that it was a coincidence, but when he thought of the little fatty's proud look just now, he was speechless. If it's not him, who else could it be? On TV, the reporter was asking Guozi about his learning skills. The little fatty said, "I don't have any skills in learning. The most important thing is that I have a lot of motivation to learn. I worked very hard before the exam. So I suggest that the examinees in front of the TV must find your goal and then work hard with all your might. I believe that you will definitely be able to get the ideal results." At this point, Guozi's answer was not bad. But the reporter asked another question. "Then can you share your goal with everyone? Is it to get into Beihua University of Qing University?" Yang Yi saw the excitement in Guozi's eyes. As expected, Guozi said, "No, my goal is to get into Zhongqing Media University." "What?" Yang Yi added a sentence in his mind for the dumbfounded reporter. Although Zhongqing Media University was considered a university, the cutoff score was not high. As the top student, he did not want to get into Beihua University of Qing University but wanted to get into this university. Wasn't this using a butcher's knife to kill a chicken? 2 months ago, I took the art examination at Zhongqing Media University. But unfortunately, the examiners thought that I was fat and young, so they did not let me pass. Guozi said with a serious face. "But I'm not discouraged. I've set my ambition. I must get into Zhongqing Media University." In the end, he even waved his arms at the camera and shouted with high fighting spirit, "Zhongqing Media University, I'm coming." Yang Yi covered his forehead. He was completely speechless with this joker. He was obviously so talented, so why did he have to make things difficult for others? Moreover, did he have to be so high profile? She did not pay much attention to what the uncle on TV said. When she saw that her father was no longer watching TV, she rolled her eyes and secretly took the remote control from her father's arms. Change the channel and watch cartoons. Chapter 89. Qiu Xiaotong was the class monitor of Wu Hu First Middle School's third year, second class. Although it was already summer vacation, because she had been promoted to the third year of high school, the first-year students didn't have the chance to enjoy their vacation. They stayed at home for less than 10 days before returning to school. As a girl who grew up in the military, Qiu Xiaotong had a healthy complexion. She was tanned and had a carefree personality. She didn't care that her classmates said she was tan behind her back, that she was fierce and would hit people, that she was tall but didn't have a boyfriend, and that she wouldn't be able to get married in the future. After all, she was too straightforward. She was strict when it came to helping the teacher enforce discipline. When she saw something wrong or unfair, she would stand up for justice. This made her offend others often and become the public enemy of the female students. Why not the male students? Because Qiu Xiaotong was not only tall, but she was also a valiant and beautiful girl. Even if she was fierce, the male students couldn't bring themselves to hate her. During class today, Qiu Xiaotong discovered a new situation. A few male students gathered together and whispered something. One moment they were excited, the next moment they were depressed, and the next moment they were angry. Qiu Xiaotong frowned. She felt that this situation was very similar to the Qingming festival holiday when the male students were discussing going to the internet cafe to play games. Last time, Qiu Xiaotong passed by to buy sanitary products for girls and happened to bump into them. She threatened to tell the teacher, so this group of daring guys went back to study. "Hey, Gengli, Jing Guisan, what are you guys doing?" Qiu Xiaotong walked over and shouted, "Don't tell me you guys are sneaking to the internet cafe to play games again?" Gung Li's body trembled. He retracted his hand and wanted to hide the thing in his hand. Jing Guisan cooperated with him. He stood up and blocked Qiu Xiaotong's view. He smiled and said, "Sister Tong, why would we still want to play games? Aren't we almost in the third year of high school? We have to study hard. We are discussing literature." Another male student next to them had an idea and said, "Yes, we are discussing literature. We are discussing literature." Jing Guisan and Gung Li quickly echoed, "Discussing literature." Qiu Xiaotong frowned. She didn't believe their nonsense. If they really liked literature, would they have messed up their language exam? Qiu Xiaotong, who was suspicious, looked at them carefully and immediately found something fishy. "Gung Li, what's in your hand?" "Ah, it's nothing," Gung Li said with a bitter face. "Take it out. Otherwise, I'll ask the teacher to confiscate it," Qiu Xiaotong threatened. Gung Li had no choice but to obediently take out the smartphone hidden in his hand. He knew that although Qiu Xiaotong was fierce, she was actually quite kind. If she didn't take it, she would at most teach it a lesson. Then, after school, she would let the students take it back. But if the teacher didn't take it, the parents would be informed. "You guys are using your phones to play games?" Qiu Xiaotong took her phone and said in exasperation, "Why aren't you concentrating on your studies at a time like this?" "Big Sister Tong, we're really talking about literature," Gung Li argued, feeling wronged. "If you don't believe me, take a look. We're talking about a novel." "What novel?" Qiu Xiaotong opened it suspiciously. "Drawing Sword. What kind of novel is this? You don't even know Liangjian. This book is too popular." A boy beside him couldn't help but say. It was as if they had opened up a chatterbox and started talking all at once. "Drawing Sword is a novel about war. Li Yunlong is too awesome, he." Qiu Xiaotong had some understanding of the novel's popularity from their messy descriptions. There must be something unique and wonderful about it if it could make these boys so excited. "I think you should read it, Big Sister Tong." Jing Guisen's voice was so loud that it suddenly drowned out the voices of others. He said, "Big Sister Tong, isn't your family also a soldier? You'll definitely like this kind of military novel." "I think Big Sister Tong might not like it. The author killed off the female lead," Gung Li said weakly. "But isn't there a female lead at the end?" A boy next to him said. "But why would a girl like such a playboy male lead?" Gung Li said. "I told Lei about this book last time and she didn't like it very much. How is our Big Sister Tong an ordinary girl?" They started arguing among themselves again. Although she had not read it yet, the name of Drawing Sword was reflected in Qiu Xiaotong's mind after their argument. At night, Qiu Xiaotong returned to her home in the Jiangnan military region. She was indeed born into a military family. Her parents served in the frontier, so Qiu Xiaotong lived with her grandfather. Although her grandfather had retired, he still enjoyed the treatment of a high-ranking general as he was a high-ranking general. He had a small building with a garden and specially assigned guards. After finishing her homework, Qiu Xiaotong could not help but think of Drawing Sword that the boys were talking about. Qiu Xiaotong turned on her computer curiously and connected to the website that Gung Li gave her. Drawing Sword was written by Yang Yi. Qiu Xiaotong noticed that the author had also written a novel called Assault of the Soldiers. She was not in a hurry to read the book. Instead, she browsed through the book review section first. This was actually a bad habit because the book review section was prone to spoilers and it was easy to be misled by some comments. However, the book review section of Drawing Sword was very magical. Fans of the book were spamming posts saying, "Don't let Li Yunlong be persecuted. P.S. As for the plot after Drawing Sword, Xiaohan will not describe it again. After all, it's a bit of a landmine. I can only say that it's very touching and heartbreaking. Those who have never read a book but have only watched TV series suggest that you read the book." Almost half of the content was deleted from the TV series. This made Qiu Xiaotong even more curious. Looking at the book reviews, she knew that the book was about to end, but why were the fans crying and pleading with the author? Regardless, Qiu Xiaotong started reading from the first chapter. The next day, Qiu Xiaotong went to school with dark circles under her eyes. When she arrived at school, she gritted her teeth and gave Gung Li, Jing Guisen, and the others a good beating. "My dear Sister Tong, why did you beat us up?" Gung Li screamed. "It's all your fault for recommending that book to me. I read it until I lost track of time and only went to bed in the middle of the night." Qiu Xiaotong said angrily. It was not that Drawing Sword was not good but that it was too good. Qiu Xiaotong was mesmerized by the chapters of tight battles. She did not want to let go at all, but by the time she came to her senses, It was already very, very late. Even so, she had only finished half of it in the middle of the night. There was more to come. Therefore, after school in the afternoon, Qiu Xiaotong did not stay behind to study with her roommates. Instead, she went home early, hurriedly finished her homework, and continued reading. What Qiu Xiaotong did not know was that Drawing Sword was ushering in its finale that day. Yang Yi did not waste any time and directly released the last chapter and epilogue together. However, Qiu Xiaotong could not help but read it for a few hours until the end. Sob sob. When she saw Li Yunlong shoot himself, Qiu Xiaotong, a tough woman who never shed tears, burst into tears. Xiaotong, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Qiu Xiaotong's grandfather, Qiu Weigua, knocked on his granddaughter's door with a cane and asked in a loud voice, "Who provoked our Xiaotong? Tell Grandpa. Grandpa will send someone to beat him to death." Sob sob. Sob sob, it's Yang Yi. He's a bastard. Chapter 90. Qiu Xiaotong's Yang Yi is a bastard was, of course, just a small misunderstanding. It did not bring any bloodshed to Yang Yi. General Qiu was old, but he was not muddle-headed. Instead, after his granddaughter's explanation, he developed a strong interest in Yang Yi's novels. It was not only Drawing Sword, but also Yang Yi's previous Soldier's Assault. Old General Qiu's blood boiled and he could not help but applaud. Old General Qiu became Yang Yi's fan and spurred the Jiangnan military region to learn Drawing Sword. They learned from Su Sandua's spirit of not giving up and giving up, which allowed Yang Yi's upcoming physical book to find a large sales outlet. Of course, that was all in the future. The completion of Drawing Sword brought Yang Yi a high reputation and many times more income than Soldier's Assault. That gave him the money to invest in Sahara Online Bookstore. However, the editor, Chong Zi, was very nervous. He had been harassing Yang Yi for the past few days. "Oh my God, you finished writing your old book a long time ago. Why don't you have plans to start a new book?" If an editor of traditional literature dared to urge an author like that, it would definitely be unprofessional. After all, traditional literature needed time to brew. How could an author start a new book after finishing one? However, that was the case with online literature. In order to maintain its popularity, new content had to appear constantly to retain the attention of readers. However, Yang Yi was not an ordinary online writer. He was indifferent to Chong Zi's urging. "I don't have plans to start a new book yet. Let's take a break for a month first." "How can that be?" Chong Zi said anxiously. However, Yang Yi would not easily change his plan, so Chong Zi had to settle for the next best thing and said, "Then you have to tell us about the situation of the new book in the future. What's the theme and a general introduction so that we can arrange publicity for you and keep your popularity?" However, Yang Yi's next answer made Chong Zi want to die. "I don't have a general introduction, but I can reveal the theme. I plan to write about crime." "What?" Chong Zi was dumbfounded. "You're not writing about the military. Or are you going to write about military crimes?" "No, it's crime." "Oh right, I still have something to do, so I'll talk to you later. Bye." Yang Yi hung up the phone, leaving a messy Chong Zi alone in the office. Yang Yi wasn't trying to evade the responsibility. He really had something to do. Who asked Chong Zi to call him at such a bad time? Besides, Yang Yi couldn't be delayed for too long. She was alone in the car. Although the air conditioner was on, it wasn't safe. After putting down the phone, Yang Yi returned to the cake shop and continued to describe to the staff. "The general style is like what I drew on the paper. You have to make it feel like ice." "Yes, I know it requires a lot of processes, but I also asked around for a long time before I found out that the craftsmanship here is more reliable. So as long as I'm satisfied, money isn't a problem." That's right, Yang Yi was ordering a cake for Shi. It was Murphy who told Yang Yi, so he knew that July 13th was his daughter's birthday. Therefore, in order to be able to prepare the first birthday party for Shi, Yang Yi began to prepare 2 days in advance, including ordering a cake, buying some decorations, gifts and so on. Of course, in order to give Shishi a surprise, Yang Yi certainly had to inform the cake shop to order a cake without telling Shishi. After dealing with it, Yang Yi returned to the car. Shishi was already a little impatient. The little girl pursed her lips and deliberately waited for her father to look at her after he got in the car. Then she turned her head angrily to express her strong dissatisfaction. Okay. Dad apologizes to you. I shouldn't have been gone for so long and made Shishi wait for so long. Yang Yi smiled. How could he not see the little girl's little tricks? I don't want to talk to you, the little girl said angrily. Why? Yang Yi, an 8-foot-tall man, also became gentle in front of his daughter. He pretended to be wronged and asked. Shishi turned her head, and the expression on her little face was still very serious. Because Papa, you said you were going to take Shishi out shopping to buy clothes, but in the end, you left her in the car and went shopping alone. Yang Yi, tell me, are you lying to me? Shishi's serious appearance at the beginning made Yang Yi somewhat unable to restrain a smile, but the Yang Yi at the end made Yang Yi suddenly confused. This little girl, where did she learn Murphy's tone? She also learned it vividly. Ahem, Dad just went to do something, and I didn't deceive Shishi. Yang Yi said with a wry smile. Really? Cece's heart wavered. Yang Yi nodded fiercely and said, Yes, now is the time to go shopping. Shishi's expression eased. She sighed deeply and said, Well, then I forgive you. The child's temper came quickly and disappeared quickly. Not long after Yang Yi started the car, Shishi pestered him and asked, Papa, where are we going to play? Are we very close now? Are we going to buy a lot of clothes for Shishi? Shishi seemed to have 100,000 questions, and she couldn't stop asking. In fact, children were quite annoying. Sometimes some questions were asked repeatedly. If you didn't answer in time, she would be like a repeater, repeating hundreds of times. Fortunately, Yang Yi's character was relatively patient, and he could endure Shishi's sometimes nagging like Tang Sanzang. In addition, he was really free, and he didn't get tired of answering the little girl's questions, and it didn't delay his own business, opening an unpopular coffee shop and writing novels. Although the main purpose of coming out this afternoon was to order a cake for his daughter, since he had promised to take Shishi shopping, Yang Yi didn't break his promise. This time he didn't go to Haihong Shopping Mall in Binhai District, but to the pedestrian street in Wuhu District of the LC District, because the cake shop was in Wuhu District. Of course, the things sold in this pedestrian street were not as expensive as those in Haihong Shopping Mall. Most of them were small businesses, and most of the people shopping were residents of the LC District. In the past, Yang Yi was shy of money. If he had to buy some clothes, he would choose this pedestrian street. Therefore, Yang Yi wanted to take the nostalgic route when he came to shop this time. He took his daughter to stroll around shop after shop. Shishi was a feast for the eyes, but she didn't buy anything, because there were not many children's clothing stores in this pedestrian street. Instead, a jewelry store attracted Yang Yi and Shishi to stop. Do you like this? Put it on, and you will really look like a little princess. Yang Yi smiled and took off a silver crown with beads, and put it on Shishi's head. Price was very cheap. There was a price tag of 20 yuan on the shelf, and Yang Yi knew that if he was willing to bargain, there would be a maximum of 10 yuan. It could be seen that this crown couldn't be made of metal. At most, it was plastic, and the beads were the same. They were all glossy plastic beads. However, Shishi still liked it very much. She looked in the mirror and lifted her small skirt with interest. She was very proud of herself. We'll take this. Yang Yi smiled and handed the shop owner the money. It was okay to be nostalgic, but Yang Yi didn't like to bargain. After all, he wasn't who he used to be. You're tuning in to the Whispers of Romance YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.